As far as I know, there are no changes that are required for the agenda unless, Bill, you have something?
No.
Thank you. So we'll accept the agenda as you have in front of you. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me for a Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands
indivisible,
for all.
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is the visitor section. Just a little preface to that. The public comments visitor section of the meeting is an opportunity for members of the community to address issues of concern about policy, budget, or administrative matters, or to share ideas about how we can work together to improve our schools. We value input and respect divergent views. We ask you to limit your remarks to the 2 minutes for 2-minute time restraints, and refrain from airing grievances and with individual members of the school community, including respecting the privacy of the students and parents. Those attending remotely may type their full name in the comment section and they will be recognized to speak. During the meeting, the comment section will be disabled. Please state your full name and the town of your residence. Also, we'll first deal with folks in the room, and then we'll deal with those remotely. And I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes so that I will be interrupting if people go beyond 2 minutes. That's 2 minutes per topic. Okay, so who wants to go? Who's going first in this group? In the room.
Yep, we have somebody coming into the mic, Nilda.
Yes?
Hi. I'm Amanda Giroux, resident of St. Albans Town. I'm here to speak in regards to my request to have the SRO program added to the ballot. I'm not looking for the question of whether or not the program should be reinstated. I'm looking for whether or not the liaison program should be reevaluated. This way the board gets a true number of those who are either for or against it being reevaluated. I know that there are those who feel the same way I do, parents and staff alike, who think the liaison program is not enough. I think we want the same end goal, for our children, all children, to be safe. With no one on site and no additional staff, such as mental health counselors, I think that the liaison program, with no disrespect to the current liaison officer, is a downgrade from the security that we once had. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Jamie Thorpe Bourgeois, and I am St. Albans Town. And I'm here to address the school board concerning the SRO discussions that have been continuing for over a year now. I am a parent and community member that was aware of the SRO panel and discussions prior to the SRO being removed from our schools. However, all that time, not only was I preoccupied with COVID, attempting to be a teacher to my 2 daughters, and keeping obligations to my employer, my husband was a law enforcement officer within our community. At the time, there was an organized group of community members attempting to gather all the names of officers within the police department, surveilling officer social media accounts with the agenda of trying to find wrongdoing. Though overall making law enforcement and our families feel uncomfortable, I did not feel as if I could speak on the SRO at that time due to retaliation I was concerned my law enforcement family would receive. If I chose to speak out, I was truly worried that my husband may become a target and eventually not have employment, which provided financially for my family. One of my children attended BFA during this time and was harassed and threatened solely due to her father being a law enforcement officer. At this time, my husband has decided to only be involved in law enforcement part-time, partially due to the defund the police and the hate towards police officers in general throughout the United States. I was also recently made aware that not only is the response time for our school liaison officer approximately 11 minutes, but the school liaison officer would not be able to access this school without a person inside to allow the officer access during a lockdown situation. Can that be guaranteed in an active shooter situation? This may be able to happen if the muscle memory for said person inside the school was able to do that. But since we are having no to very little drills, that seems unlikely. When the community survey went out, the results spoke for themselves and several board members went on with their own agenda. The SRO panel suggested several other options other than eliminating the SRO program. However, several members went on with the one suggestion that aligned with what they wanted. At the last school board meeting, Superintendent Kimball stated that if the SRO issues were to be placed for a vote, it will make you weaker as a board. And with that being said, it seems to me that a majority of the board is very closed off. But Peter, I would like to thank you for always being accountable to the community that you serve on as a board member.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Chris Castor. I'm a parent of two students in St. Albans, SATEC, and I spoke on this subject a couple weeks ago at the same board meeting. I prepared some thoughts tonight because I know I only have 2 minutes, but I want to highlight something. In coming to this meeting tonight, I had two little girls come to the door and almost let me in. Okay? They would have let me in had I told them, please don't let me in. I'll wait to be buzzed in. That speaks to why I'm here tonight. So, on with my thoughts. First, I'd like to apologize for not being part of this conversation as it was happening. I realize that several people spent a lot of time researching this topic. I also realize that we as voters have entrusted you as a board to make decisions that have the ability to impact both our children's lives and education. Since I've become involved in this debate, I've spent time looking into how this decision was made. It has become clear to me that this study committee was in part swayed by our political environment at the time and by a vocal group of people who clearly were biased against police in general. People that describe our SRO as, and I quote, people with guns walking around our schools. Comments were made at one of the committee meetings insinuating that our SRO, if given the position, may use the N-word while beating up a black student, or another one vilifying a school administrator for simply being pro-police. The committee revisited several questions, one of which was who would be positively impacted by the removal of this program. The first answer was, quote, staff and students who feel less safe in the building and at work or school with an SRO present. However, earlier in that same meeting, they referenced a survey where the vast majority of school employees supported the program. I believe it was 70%. What about their representation? The same was said about parents or guardians who feel less safe sending their children to school knowing an SRO was present. Again, that group overwhelmingly supported this program. What about them? I travel a lot for work. I have to go in airports all the time. Before boarding a flight, I'm asked to remove my shoes, my bags are x-rayed, as am I. And I'm sure that most people that board that flight would feel more secure with a federal air marshal on that plane. Since 9/11, to my knowledge, not one person has been shot or killed on a plane in this country. Over 400 kids have been killed in our schools as a result of school violence. Anyone can use data, research, and, excuse me?
You're beyond your time, so
Somebody else want to
we
read
wrap it up.
Somebody else want to finish this? Because I think it brings a lot of points. I worked really hard on this, okay? So if the board would be open, I'd like to continue, because I think it warrants it. Anyone can use data, research, and statistics to bolster their views. I can throw out that the Federal Commission on School Safety says that the ability of specially selected and trained SROs to establish trust relationships with students has been demonstrated to prevent school shootings. The same report goes on to say that in addition, there have been numerous documented instances of SROs directly intervening to prevent or quickly mitigate active school shootings. To be honest, I rely on actual facts. Case in point, my close family friend, who himself was a student at SATEC in the 90s, who later relocated to Michigan, whose daughter attends Oxford High School, explained to me that if it was not for an SRO taking down a shooter, his daughter was hiding in the next classroom would be a victim, not a survivor. He reminded me that Oxford is much like St. Albans, very small, where you don't think this could ever happen. Are there bad police officers in this country? There are bad teachers, there's bad cooks, there's bad in every profession. But do we vilify them? No, we fix it. I teach my children that police are the ones that you run to if you're in danger. They will protect you. In my view, it takes a special person to sign up to put their life in danger for others that many times they have never met. I think it's wrong that we're creating an environment where children feel less secure around an SRO or police presence. Not only wrong, but dangerous. We only seem to focus on the ugly things that happen, instead of the overwhelming positive things that our law enforcement does on every single day. I believe we live in a community where if an SRO treated someone, including the BIPOC community, unfairly, he or she would lose their job instantly. As a board, you must envision what a meeting would look like days after the unthinkable happens. These chairs would be filled with grieving parents asking you what you've done to prevent this. Can you honestly say, with the system that we have in place, that you've done that? I don't think so. And I'll tell you this, you may not put this on the ballot, but I guarantee you tonight, those that oppose it will be running against me, because I'm gonna run for the school board, and I'll make it the center of my campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Nilda.
Hi. Yeah, I'm just gonna sit rather than readjust the mic there. But let's see here. Well, I set out last meeting intentionally trying to avoid summarizing the efforts of the SRO study committee, figuring that enough of you had been there and were able to testify to it anyway, and I ended up, I think, leaving a wrong impression of my thoughts about it. But I just wanted to restate more clearly that the suggestions that a couple of you in the study committee came up with, some of which you, and as was their duty, they come up with the general framework for the.
Excuse me, sir. Can you say your name and where you're from?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Jeffrey Nelson from Fairfield.
Thank you.
And there was a deliberative process where you commissioned their work, and they presented in a June 2021 meeting, they presented their work to you. And as we know, you went on from there and came up with the solution or a potential solution, and it wasn't necessarily the top choice from what I understand from the meeting and from that advisory meeting in June. That it was simply a matter of time. They hadn't had the appropriate time to flesh out the liaison program to decide it more completely. And I like the fact that many stakeholders were present on that committee, including school system staff, students, parents, former police, and so I appreciate that they used that deliberation to reflect the opinions with the survey, surveying hundreds of Vermonters, the data that was affected by thousands of, if not hundreds of thousands of citizens in the country overall. And moving on to the topic of engagement in general, one of the most enduring images that we Vermonters have or people have of Vermont, whether they recognize it or not, is Norman Rockwell's freedom of speech, and depicts his, as a model, his Arlington, Vermont town meeting day, and someone standing up and saying their piece and using their voice to represent their civic engagement. And I think there are some good ideas, some of which happen to come out of those recommendations from the study committee. But in terms of if you're looking as a board to increase civic engagement with the idea, with the public, there are ideas out there. One that, just a simple one that occurs to me is, if you feel like somebody might be rushing around after work or might not have the time to join at the beginning of a meeting, some bodies have a public comment period at the end of the meeting as well. So if somebody has a bad connection or whatever might befall their schedule, they've got the opportunity to weigh in at the close of the meeting. that may not be what you're interested in. Sometimes it's better to marinate or to stew on ideas to formulate your thoughts more fully.
Oh, we're running out of time again.
Okay.
Actually, you're out of time.
All right, I had moved on in topics, but that's all right, I
Can you
guess.
wrap it up, or?
Right, so let's see here. Just trying to think of anything else I had major to impress. I guess that'd be it, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go on, Karen, is that mic on? Just because it looks red, so I want to make sure we're capturing everybody. Just want to make sure we capture everyone. That's okay.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. My name is Brian Dyke. I'm from St. Albans Town. I have a daughter here at SATEC, age 11, and a son, age 7. The 2-minute thing kind of caught me off guard. I thought I had a little more time, but I'll go through my bullets here quick. I'm here today, obviously, I'm speaking again. I've spoke before about a year on it, in support of the SRO on this matter of the petition to vote, to open it up on the ballot. 2 things are my primary concern, I think, lately. One is the recent correspondence that I read on the website between what I assume was Superintendent Bill Kimball and an unnamed lawyer, and 2, the discussion between the board and Mr. Kimball last week about this matter. I don't know if it's for the board's own edification or for public record, but what I thought I heard last week from Mr. Kimball was that he was against the board putting forth the petition, as it would weaken the board and leave them open to numerous petitions on any old matter. So what I wanted to notify the board was the Messenger ran an article that said the opposite, that Mr. Kimball had recommended that the board advise the petition because they would open themselves up to potential non-reelection or political consequences. So that's out there. I don't know exactly if the board could clear that up or if it's up to the Messenger, but it's just for reference. A couple other things that came up on those items. One, I thought the lawyer there on the correspondence recommended that the situation be compared with a school mascot situation, which I thought was kind of a stretch. This SRO matter is not comparable to a school mascot situation, and secondly, that actual school mascot legislation, which I believe now in hindsight was pushed to legislation last year, and the state itself has took matters into their own hands. So it kind of disproves what that lawyer was saying, where there was some limitations to a town school board from the legislation of the state of Vermont. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legislator, and I may be wrong on those issues, but that's just my understanding of the matter. Secondly, I thought the discussion that it would be a sort of slippery slope of petitions, that every matter would be bogged down by petitions. I thought that was very marginal. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there are very special public safety matters like this SRO that are going to be more important issues that, things like a petition should be considered. I personally don't care if this is put forward to a general election or added to the ballot. I think looking back on the incident, if the board itself would just rectify some of these problems, I looked at the plans and the courses of action that they had for the liaison program, and I thought there were some decent plans there that didn't make it through. One of the things that I read in there that I have no idea why it didn't make it through was the fact that we would reevaluate this after a certain time period. I think that is just basic planning. Planners should not be afraid of that. That doesn't, to sort of audit, to reassess your plan at a certain point in time is a basic matter of planning. And I don't think that shows weakness. I think that shows leadership when you do those kinds of things. So I think this board should really take a revisit the SRO matter. I don't think we need to put it on the ballot. I would support that if we did. But I think the population of this area of the Maple Run School District largely considers this liaison program to have some serious problems and faults. And I think it needs to be revisited like good planners. And I know this board is capable of that. I have confidence in you guys. And I think the community would generally share my thoughts that the SRO program, wasn't all that bad, and there are some things that we can preserve there and revisit. So that's all I got. Thank you guys for my time.
Thank you. Next.
So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Tracy Sweeney, and I live in Georgia. I'm a parent of a BIPOC student that attends BFA. I appreciate the work that the board is undertaking around equity work. This is difficult but extremely important work. As the parent of a Black child who has experienced racial harassment both within BFA and within the community, I know how urgent this work is for ensuring a feeling of safety within school and a sense of belonging within the community. As I listened to the school board meeting in November, I was disheartened to hear that 25% of the calls made to request police presence on campus involved BIPOC students, when those same students only account for about 10% of the student population. I know that new data was presented at the last school board meeting, but it was unclear whether or how that information impacts this statistic. I am concerned by this data and would encourage the board to continue to seek information about these calls and the disproportionate involvement of BIPOC students. This data mirrors what has been seen nationwide for decades, where major racial disparities exist in student discipline rates. This data also reminds me that in its most recent history, our criminal justice system has functioned as a system of racial control. It is therefore important that we understand that the lens through which safety officers, if previously employed in the criminal justice system, may be skewed when interacting with BIPOC students as a result of the inherent bias within the criminal justice system itself. To ensure that the work of the safety officers does not further compound the racial disparities seen in student discipline rates, it is imperative that there is some form of accounting of their work, particularly as it relates to their requests for police presence on campus. It is also important that the safety officers take part in implicit bias and anti-racism training, if this has not already happened, and that it happen on a continual or annual basis. Respectfully, I encourage the board to continue to prioritize equity work within the district. A sense of safety and belonging is essential and is the foundation upon which all learning can take place. That was on one topic, and I just would briefly like to say with regards to the SRO topic, I feel like that was a process where a lot of people had input during that time, and that ran its course, and I feel like when we talk about safety for all students, we do really need to consider all students when we make a decision about bringing SROs back into the school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the room? Oh, Nilda, we got one more.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Linda Pacheco from St. Albans City. I've been a tax-paying citizen for 27 and a half years. Both my children came through the entire school system, preschool to 12th grade. And I wrote a bunch of things, but I'm going to abandon that and just say two things. My daughter's senior year, she had a fender bender before getting to school. It actually ended up being no insurance exchange, no money. It wasn't even damage to a car. But when she was pulling away, it was an icy morning, she slid back, hit the car behind her. When she was pulling away, she pulled up a street to pull over. The woman thought she was leaving the scene. So I informed the dispatch. I did not want the SRO speaking to her unless I was present, but when I arrived at school, my daughter was in hysterics, and the first thing the SRO said to me was, "I just wanted to scare her." He told her that she could go to jail. Now, my daughter was a 4.0 student, three-season athlete, foreign language club, athletic council student, never got in trouble, also generalized anxiety disorder. And his instinct was to scare her. So there's that. The second thing I want to say is that I think maybe we forgot that our school district paid out a $30,000 settlement to a family whose child was harmed by the SRO. That's our tax dollars. That student was harmed. A lot of these things we're discussing are possible things, and I understand. I was worried about mass shooting. I wanted that connector. But we also have to consider what actually happened to students and how they feel going to school every day as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone remotely wish to speak?
Dr. Jen Williamson.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Jen Williamson, town, and my child goes to SATEC. I just wanted to point out that at the last meeting, there was some discussion about whether or not the public has ample opportunity to speak to the board, and I have been through all of them, so I'd like to point these out to people. One is public comment. You know, we talked for 6 months to the board every single meeting, and as the parent of a marginalized child, I didn't have the opportunity to up to pandemic that everybody else was going through at the same time. I made it a priority to come and speak to the school board at almost every single meeting as a business owner, as a mom, as all the things that I made it a priority because my child's safety is a priority. I ran for board. I felt so important, this discussion about SROs, that I ran for board. I'm not a political person. I'm somebody who, you know, gives medical advice on a daily basis. Not very good at politics, but I did it anyways because I felt it was just that important. Applying for subcommittees. I was denied, but I still applied for the subcommittees because I wanted to make sure that my son's voice was represented. You could fill out the community surveys. Went out to the whole community, did that too. I attended the subcommittee meetings. There are lots of ways that you as the board have been listening to the public about our opinions on this matter. And a year after you make the decision, this petition comes up is just, I don't know what the purpose is. Clearly, the people who are signing these petitions aren't taking into account that real children in our district are being harmed by the SROs. They didn't read the data. They didn't read the statistics about harm. They're just thinking about themselves. And I can't teach people empathy. You either have it or you don't. You either look at kids who are marginalized, kids who are disabled, kids who are BIPOC, and you have a bit of empathy for them and you try to do what's right by them and make sure that they have all the things that they need to come to school safely and learn, or you don't. You think about yourself and you think about your own people. And I can't teach anybody to think otherwise, but I can say that, you know, we have asked in the past for there to be more than 2 minutes per event, per meeting, speaking on discussions. We asked and it's been ignored. Nobody's ever expanded it beyond 2 minutes. And it's usually at the whim of the chair to be, you know, maybe sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 5 minutes. It's like whatever, you know, loosey-goosey thing kind of happens. And I don't think that's fair. If it's going to be 2 minutes, it should be 2 minutes across the board. If it's going to be 5 minutes, it should be 5 minutes. If you're going to invite people to come and speak about things, then the people who are asking questions and asking for things specifically be done should also be asked, not just occasionally. But I will say that now that these precedents are being made, I will be asking to be put on the agenda. I will be bringing ballot items. I will remember that you voted against the advice of your lawyer if this is how you go forward. I will remember all this and I will remind other people who are going through these situations in which their children are being harmed in the schools by liaison officers, by the SROs, by the safety officers, all of these different people. I'm going to remember all of this. So again, you know,
I'm running out of time.
Things, and I will make sure that I continue to speak for the voices of people who are marginalized and who are not receiving equitable education in our schools because some people want to use their numbers to come in and bring police officers back. I will make sure that that does not happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else
Robin
in the
Hickey.
remote world have something they'd like to say?
Robin Hickey.
Hi, this is Robin Hickey. I live in St. Albans City, and I've had 4 kids that have been with St. Albans City School and BFA. I'm here today to voice my sadness, but also my disgust over the fact that the board is even considering to entertain the SRO topic again. It's a huge slap in the face to those who did show up to every single meeting back when it was originally being discussed. The board is well aware of the statistics regarding SRO programs across the country and how they have proven to not only be a waste of taxpayer dollars, but also how harmful it is to certain BIPOC and other minorities within the school population, both students and staff members. I know that no one on the board wants to cause harm to anyone in the community, but by allowing this topic to resurface, again, you are doing exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Lauren Dees Erickson.
Go
Do I
ahead.
propose? Oh, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So a few issues have been conflated in this debate in multiple statements and by a few community members. As a result, I felt compelled to use 2 minutes to note a few things. I've numbered it for easy understanding. 1, anecdotal stories about a friend's friend who have benefited from SROs does not, will not, and will never replace facts. 2, civil rights issues should be non-negotiable. 3, it is never just about your child or even my child. It's about what's safe for all children. 4, ignorance on a subject can be remedied through taking time to educate yourself on the issues. There is years of unbiased data related to SROs in the schools. I encourage all of you to do your research. And 5, as a parent of 2 students of color, I find it deeply disappointing that some residents in St. Albans, instead of embracing forward progress, remain steadfast in their commitment to inequality. I ask all of you to join the rest of the world and the rest of Vermont and commit to caring for all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Erica Hamlin.
Erica?
Hello. Hi. I have been listening to every school board meeting, except maybe a handful, through the SRO discussion. And I'm smack dab in the middle. I support both sides, and I am just wondering what has taken place since the SROs have been taken out of schools. I'm wondering proactively what has been done to replace that. How many people are, I know that there was an SRO in each of the schools, so I'm wondering how many people were actually put back into those positions. I do know that it was definitely a help for the budget, taking the SROs out of schools. However, I haven't seen any correspondence. Both my children go to St. Albans City. I haven't seen any correspondence stating somebody is in place, which I believe that was the follow-up. There was going to be somebody in place of the SRO. I haven't seen anything about that. And I also, like I said, I've been swaying pretty much on, I understand both sides. But last week I was pretty put back by the discussion that the board had regarding public comment and wanting to talk about the SRO issue. I feel like as a school board, you really should be more open to other people's opinions and views. I know with the SRO, you've definitely done that. However, it shouldn't be something that you just want to close doors on, even if it's something that has been you've been talking about for years. If somebody wants to talk about it, it doesn't make you look good as a board saying, no, I don't think we're not going to talk about that, or we're not going to put this on the agenda. I feel like that really made, I don't know. I'm not really sure. But so I'm here. I'm wondering what has actually been done. Has there been proactive people within the community, or are you still part of partnership with the St. Albans PD with the new people that you have in the schools? And are they going around to the classrooms and explaining like what their importance is and that kind of thing? I guess
you're running out of time. You're out of time.
I feel like as a parent, I really wish the communication was there with the maybe it's the principal communication issue. Like I said, I haven't heard, I've read daily announcements, but haven't heard any replacement information. Mr. Kimball, are you able to speak upon that without it being on the agenda?
So this is a visitor section, which is the part of the meeting where visitors get to make their comments. It's not a dialogue between the visitors and the school board. So he's not going to respond at this time, but he may be able to prepare a response in the future, which can be distributed. Because we're taking down your questions. Our recorder is taking down your questions. So we'll make a point of getting back to you.
This was a question I had last week though, and it wasn't taken care, or last board meeting, I'm sorry. And it hasn't been addressed.
Okay, well, we'll look into that, and thank you.
Thank you.
No other.
Anyone else?
At this point, no. Other.
Yeah, I have. Hi, Eliana Castro here. I actually messaged in the chat, but it didn't. I think someone missed it. My name is Eliana Castro. I live in St. Albans City, and I'm a former teacher. I'm a researcher. I'm a teacher educator, and I have a few things to say. I've also numbered them, like Miss Dees Erickson. For one, I think because this program is new, we really have to consider giving it a little bit more time to assess its effectiveness, its efficacy, and what we might do to improve and enhance this program. Secondly, I think that we have to look at the aggregate data. St. Albans is, to a lot of people, a very special place, and our human instinct is to speak from our own experiences, but billions of dollars and hours have been poured into researching the systems and structures that schools have to enact disciplinary measures. And a lot of that research points to exactly the sort of direction that we're moving in, which is to remove SROs from school because of some of the adverse outcomes for a lot of students. And so by ignoring those and focusing on personal anecdotes, we undermine the decades of findings from rigorous social science. Third, we have to continue exploring other options. We are sending our young people the message that only force can mitigate violence. And so I think we're missing out on opportunities to explore some of the alternatives in the report. We haven't really talked substantially about wraparound services and how mental health can, if we're going to use Medicaid dollars for any of this, mental health services may be another place that we want to invest to help our young people. Anyone who, pretty much everyone who has committed a mass crime at a school has also sort of post facto been known to have had some mental health struggle. And so, you know, I think one last resort could be a community policing model with our young people. Like I said, I'm a former high school teacher. I'm a teacher educator, and I strongly believe that we have youth capital. There's potential in our students to help one another endure and overcome some of the issues that young people are having that leads to violence in schools. And so we're sending teachers the message that we don't trust them to be positive role models and supportive mentors, and we're sending young people the message that they need to be controlled by force, by coercion. And I just don't think that that's the St. Albans that that we want to project to the rest of the state and country. And so I think we could be a leader by exploring some other alternatives. So I understand where a lot of folks are struggling because they cannot see past their own personal experiences, but I encourage the board to continue to look at the trends nationwide and to not make this a place that is inhospitable to BIPOC, to LGBTQ students, to students with special needs, and a lot of other vulnerable youth communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I don't have anybody else on the list.
Steve came up with.
Oh, Nilda, we have Steve LaRosa.
Yep, Steve.
Hi, my name's Steve LaRosa and I reside in the MRUSD. As always, thank you for the opportunity to direct my concerns and comments to the board and to the administration. The same opportunity is available to everyone and has always been a part of our district. For those unable to attend board meetings or are uncomfortable doing so, other avenues to express concerns, such as through mail, email, phone calls, are also available. Please do not add a petition-driven ballot item to the mix. As I see it, the public already has well-established and ample ways of addressing the board without this problematic and precedent-setting venture. Thanks so much. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No, nobody else, Nilda.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go back to our agenda. And I just wanted, before we get started on the whole thing, I just wanted to take a minute to sort of review our operating procedures and make sure that we're all kind of coming from the same place. So I'd like to make sure that when we're talking about an action item, we have, a motion on the table first. And just to clarify, we can have a motion on the table for discussion that could be something that people do not want to approve, but it gets it on there for discussion and then we can vote it down. I know you all know that, but I'm just reiterating it. Also, if we could focus on no side talk, it's very distracting for those around you, and it's really distracting for me because I'm trying to figure out who I'm listening to. And also, if you could wait to be recognized before you speak, then we can sort of have a little more order in our discussion. And I know, just to close this section, that everybody, the board and the community, everybody's very passionate about their feelings. And I try to address that in our discussions, but we have to try to get a little more of a handle on our meetings and let them be a little more efficient in moving forward. So that's my soapbox. I apologize if I offended anyone. That was not my intent. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. There are two basic topics: the minutes from 4 different meetings and also the media packet. Does anyone need to pull anything out for discussion? Hearing none, we'll accept the consent agenda as submitted. Next item on the agenda is reports to the board. The first one is the student board rep report. And I think it's Leah and Sarah and Laura, maybe. Yes. Am I right? Well, yes. Good. So I don't know if someone's introducing your report or you're just going to kick off, but the floor is yours.
Hi, my name's Sarah McConnell. I'm going to be our student rep tonight. So to jump into it, Operation Happiness happened this weekend. We had a lot of students helping out from the sports teams and just volunteers in general. We had a coat drive last week, and we got almost around 700 coats, which was really, really great. Really, really meaningful. We had band and we had a band and chorus performance today, 4 students in the pack. A dance performance happened last week, and this week, and last week, I believe, too. We had a lot of meetings with guidance counselors about schedules for next year. So we're already planning on what's going on for that. And then break starts Friday, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Very excited.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Okay.
Okay,
No,
hearing
no.
none. I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the student support report. And I believe Alexis is handling that.
Yeah, that might be the best place.
Hi, it's been a long time. Nice to see you all. All right. Also, my apologies that I have to have my back. So I was asked to do a very,
I just want to do a little introduction.
Oh, okay.
Didn't happen too much. She said Alexis. This is Alexis Hoyce, our Director of Student Supports.
thank you, Bill,
Yeah.
yes.
I just think there's a few people that may not know, so.
Yeah. So I was asked to do a brief, just kind of overview around what the current student support system looks like at Maple Run, both within each of our school buildings and across the district as a whole. So just the first slide is a really quick, just kind of overall purpose and goal. As you know, over the years, even pre-COVID pandemic, the social, emotional, mental health, and behavior needs of our students and families are constantly changing, and they're growing. So we have a responsibility when we look at our supports that are available to students and families to continue to assess and reassess what are our structures that we have in place and what modifications do we need to make to continue to address the needs of our students in the best way possible. It's also to support the different structures and philosophies at each of our buildings. So each of our buildings have their own unique identity that we want to continue to value and embrace and support, while also looking at all of our schools as under the umbrella of Maple Run as a whole. So that's just the overall purpose and goal of the system. You can go to the next slide. So this is the current status. I'm just gonna give you time to really just quickly look at this. This is gonna be the last slide of the presentation, and I'll leave that up on the screen for more kind of dialogue and conversation. But this just really outlines the current structures and supports that, again, are in place at each of our individual schools. And again, I'm going to move on because I'm going to pop this back up at the very, very end, so we'll come back to it. These are the positions that are not building-based positions, but they're positions based out of the district and impact and work within each of the individual schools. And I will, we'll talk about a little bit later. The red is the positions that are currently funded by grants, which I think Bill is going to talk more about later. But that's what the red font means. It's highlighting the current positions that are not in the local budget and are grant funded. And then this one is really fun with a lot of animation. I hope you appreciate the time that it took. So this just shows the growth over time. So the white text is are things and positions that were put in place prior to the 2019-2020 school year. And then if you click the green font are additions that were made starting in the 2019-2020 school year. And then if you click again, the blue is the position that was added in the 2020-2021 school year. And you can see that one of the positions, can you go back just a second? One more. So go again. So the homeschool coordinator, you'll see essentially replaced the behavior specialist position that was in place at Fairfield. And then if you go on to the red, That shows the additions that were made during the 2020-2021 school year, and you could see that that behavior specialist position was replaced by a behavior consultant position. And then if you go to the last step, these are the additions that were made for the 2022-2023 school year. So obviously that's the school year that we're in right now. And then if you go to what I think is the last slide, this is a repeat of the current status in each of our buildings, and this just shows the difference between what is locally funded and what is currently grant funded. So as you can see, we do have a good chunk of student support positions that are currently being supported by grant funds, both within each of our individual buildings and across the district as a whole. And that's it.
Could you do a couple of things that, I know I always have problems with because I ask you these questions, so I'm sure. Could you just tell us a little bit like what a behavior specialist is, a behavior consultant, family engagement, just some of the positions? Because we live it every day as educators, but I'm not sure everyone else might.
Yeah, so I can give a very brief kind of overview because there's a lot to all of those positions and they may look slightly different depending on the building that the position is in. So just to give, again, a very brief general overview, family engagement specialists and homeschool coordinators, their primary role is around supporting students and families with engagement or re-engagement into school. So they work with a lot of families that are struggling with chronic truancy. They do a lot of outreach and connection to our outside agencies and connecting families with community resources. Many of them do home visits to, again, be that liaison to parents and students to hopefully bring students back physically into the building that are struggling with attendance. Our school counselors really do many different things, again, depending on what building you're in. Some do small group work with students, many push into the classroom and do a lot of social, emotional, and mental health supports, both training and support of teachers and staff, but also they also work again with students and families individually, classroom-wide, and in small groups. The SAP, you'll see 2 of those schools have a little bullet that says one position includes SAP. The difference is that role really focuses on substance use. So that's really, again, connecting students and families that might be struggling with substance use to outside resources, to proactive and preventative education. Behavior consultants and behavior specialists, they're really the ones, again, working with identified students around implementing behavior plans, putting safety and crisis plans in place, training our direct support staff that are working with students, collaborating and teaming with administration and classroom teachers on universal strategies that can be used in the classroom to build routines and structure that supports positive and proactive behaviors. And they also do a lot of behind-the-scenes work in terms of Title IX support, hazing, harassment, and bullying. So they have their hands in a lot of different pieces that involve behavior support, both reactive and responsive behavioral support, and preventative and proactive support with classrooms and staff. The alternative programs are pretty self-explanatory, so these are programs and essentially self-contained classrooms. That is a kind of a more restrictive step outside of the general ed classroom, but it's a step before we have to talk about alternative or out-of-district placements for students. So that those programs are still keeping kids in the schools as part of the Maple Run community, and is preventing a lot of students from needing to access their education outside of Maple Run. And then Dean of Students and Student Support Coordinator, that's just an added layer to the administration teams at SATEC and BFA, and again, they wear a lot of hats. They primarily support behavior specialists, homeschool coordinators, and school counselors on just the systems and the structures around mental health and behavior and social emotional supports. And they're an added support for administration. And then we've talked a lot about our safety workers at BFA. So those have been put in place in the absence of the SRO. And again, the red is what is funded by grants.
I was hoping to hear more about the alternative program that was put into place this year.
Yeah, Bill and I have talked about that, and we thought that that would be a separate presentation that we would do for the board, because I know the program manager wants to be present for that discussion as well as potential students. So they want to be able to speak to that, because they live and breathe that program every day. But they're itching to do a presentation for the board, so we'll get that on an agenda.
When can we get that on the agenda?
I'll have to look at the.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Any other questions for Alexis?
Yeah,
we have Ryer.
Can you just talk about the,
Okay.
I'm noticing just like a lack in the city school, right? There's like less there in the city, so can you just talk about why that is? Why there's no behavioral consultant, school-based behavior consultant, NCSS?
So that's a really great question, and one of the big differences is what you'll see about City School is they have 2 alternative programs that are run by alternative education teachers, whereas Fairfield and SATEC do not have that as an added layer. So essentially, the behavior specialist and the behavior consultant at Fairfield and SATEC are in place because they don't have that other resource or that other avenue of an alternative classroom and an alternative program within the building. But that's a really great question, because it is important to kind of elaborate that when we say alternative programs, there's behavior interventionists in those rooms that get a lot of training, and they are run by alternative education teachers that have more of a background in mental health and trauma.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Grant.
quick question.
Oh, sorry, Grant, go ahead.
You have a list of positions on slide 4. Right, and then on slide 5, you've got a table that has, I think, many of these positions listed, as well as a lot of the positions that are on slide 6, but they're not all positions are on all pages. What's the?
So the 5 and 6, the tables are just the building-based positions.
Okay.
Slide 4 are central office-based positions, so they work in all of the buildings. So when you talk about applied behavior services coordinators, school psychs, occupational therapists, they don't just work at SATEC or just work at Fairfield.
Okay.
They're based out of central office and they travel to all of the schools, whereas the tables are just showing you what each building has.
So if you have a seat in a building, you show up at a table.
I'm
And
sorry, I
if you have like a seat in a building,
Yes.
you show up at the table, and then everyone on slide 4 is in addition to this support.
Correct. So the behavior consultant, let's just use Fairfield for an example. The behavior consultant at Fairfield only works at Fairfield, and that's their home base. Whereas the applied behavior services coordinator on the MRUSD slide is out of central office and pushes in and travels to all of the schools.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I guess the only other question, and it doesn't, you don't have to answer it right now, but if we could, like, I guess, get that information, and or I could just also sit down and look at this, I guess, a little bit better, would be going back to some of the questions that we received from people in our community in terms of the, when we removed SROs in some of the schools, what were the positions that were replaced? We did talk about putting more mental health wraparound services within each of the schools. So I guess that would be really important for us to point out and be able to communicate back out with people so they can see what was.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm not really answering your question.
I don't need it tonight, just at some point if we could have that information, like maybe just a follow-up slide that we could have at a later meeting, and then we could share that with people.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say, and again, it's not directly addressing the SRO question, but around, again, the yellow is what we put in place this year, and a lot of the red is what we put in place both at the beginning of FY '22 and also halfway through, so.
So
that-
yellow and red.
Yellow and red,
Mhm.
yeah. And I know that there are more positions that are being advocated for and proposed for next school year around social, emotional, and mental health and behavior supports.
And there were also some of those district positions on slide 4
Right.
that were added in those 2 years since the switch from an SRO to a DLO. It's one of the reasons that question, to me, this presentation and showing the colors that Alexis did really shows the added supports that have been added that were much greater than what the resources were as the resources changed. Most
Yeah,
of
and
those are, and we're gonna talk about those later in the budget discussion, and you highlighted them in here. A lot of those are grant funded.
Yeah, and I do think, again, that it's worth noting that if you look at FY '21, so the 2020-2021 school year, there was only one position added. And then when you look beyond that at last year and this school year, there's been multiple positions added each year since then. And again, more, hopefully more to come starting next year.
Just so that I'm understanding, so we had, and I'm not speaking in favor of the SRO program.
Yeah.
I know, I don't wanna go there, but we had that, we lost that, and we knew that we still need some sort of security, we've talked about that. That's our number one job, is make sure the kids are safe. And at city school, we replaced it with a homeschool coordinator.
No, and that's what, so when Joanna's question, I wanted to intentionally clarify that my answer to her question wasn't saying we put these in place solely because of the decision around the SRO. I'm
Right.
just saying the correlation between the year of the discussion around the SRO program and the year since then.
Okay, I understand
But I'm
that.
not doing a direct correlation of this happened because of this.
I understand, thank you.
Grant, go ahead.
Would would an SRO be considered part of the support?
Yes.
Like, they would go on this chart if they existed?
Yes, and that's why if you look, if
Yeah.
you go back again quickly.
They're there.
They were there?
Yeah.
before? Okay.
Sorry, John. You can bill me later for all the clicking. So the district liaison officer
Right.
is on there as
Is
a
on
current
there.
system.
Yep.
If the SROs were in place, they would
They would be
on
on there.
that slide.
And,
Represented
And the
for
safety
Maple Run
officers.
as a,
and they would be in across MRUSD, or they would be in the school where they were located?
they would be put in the table in the school where they
In
were
the school.
located.
All right. And did all schools have them?
No.
I think they did not, right?
Fairfield did not.
City did though.
Yes.
Where is the DLO currently showing, if I can see that slide?
It's on
The third bullet.
No, I know, but
Oh,
the,
sorry.
what school?
So it's on this slide because it works in all of our schools. So it represents Maple Run. It's not housed or placed in a specific school. So it's not in the last table that we talked about. Because the last table is just the school buildings. These are district-wide positions that push into all of the buildings. So that's why it's on here and not in the school-based table.
Thank you.
But
This
you
was a
do
very
have the
difficult-
safety officers just at BFA.
Just at
So just,
BFA.
just so
Yep.
people understand.
Yep. I appreciate the questions because this information, it was very difficult to try to navigate how do we visually show this in a succinct way. So I appreciate all the clarifying questions.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thanks, Alexis.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate all that. Next item is old business, and Nina's gonna handle that.
All right, old business number 7A, firearm safety letter, which is attachment 7A. The administration recommends a motion for the MRUSD School Board of Directors to endorse the firearm safety letter. Could I have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Ryer, first, thank you. Al, seconded, thank you. Any discussion? That was the letter, just to reiterate, that we went over last time, and we just wanted to give people a chance to read it. And I don't know, Maura, Sarah, Leah, do you have anything to add, or?
Nothing to add, no, I just think it's very important and it means a lot to, I guess, the people that approached us as well as, the social Social Justice Club, and I think that, I mean, personally reading it, I think it has a lot of good information that not a lot of people would know about right off, so I think it's very important. Yeah, and I thank the board for considering it and signing it.
Great.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I think this is fantastic. My only concern is that people aren't gonna be able to see it. Like, I know we put it out on the website and that, but like, I would like to see this go out to families in paper form, in email. I mean, I think there's a lot of information in here that is great information, and I think people would really benefit from seeing this. It's eye-opening.
How is this planned to be communicated?
I was planning to use our rapid communication system. We generally don't mail things.
No,
if the
but could
board
this be
felt-
put in like a, you know, like in the beginning when they send out packets to parents?
Yeah,
like,
no, we
beginning
can,
of the
it's
year?
something we can do for that,
Yeah.
for future years.
Right,
But
right, right, that's
I'm
what I was saying,
planning,
sorry.
as I said at the last board meeting, action by the board tonight, tomorrow,
Yep.
it would go.
But like from, could this be something that we add to the parent handout every year in the beginning of the year? I mean,
I think we can figure that out.
perfect.
Good question.
I just wanted to say, what you presented to us also leads to what Elena Castro was talking about when she was talking about student-led policing issues or student-led restorative justice, right? That it provides ownership for the young people in our schools to have say in how things are, Eliana, sorry, how issues like this are educated to students and relegated and regulated. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I actually agree with what Katie was saying. You know, sometimes when I've done stuff like this at school, I send home like a certificate and something that a parent and a young child in the home sign together. They make like a pact, right, together. So I think there could be, you know, some way to kind of possibly do that where people are signing, or you could invite people to do that in a newspaper even, who's willing to, you know, sign on to making a pledge to do this education within their household or whatnot. So there's lots of different ways that we can get community involved and get more people on board with it, and then also putting it out to the community and just kind of reinforcing the education behind it and the importance behind it. So I think it's great. Thank you for your work on it.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Thanks, Joanna. Anybody else? Anybody online? No, Al's there. Okay, if there's no more discussion, why don't we go ahead and take a vote on this? Al?
Yes.
Okay, Nilda?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes?
Grant?
Yes.
Ryer?
Yep.
Joanna?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
And Nina. Motion carries. Okay. So thank you again. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
gonna head out as well. Thank you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Early this time.
Gonna go do- Thanks for staying.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right, 7B, under old business, we have implicit bias and anti-racism training. Bill?
Yeah, I have actually two things on this. One, to update you just in reminders about where our work with Creative Discourse Group is. As I reported to you at the last meeting, we had many listening sessions, and the data from that listening sessions had been analyzed and came with 5 recommendations. 2 that Creative Discourse Group is going to lead with a steering committee to develop community engagement opportunities to discuss possible actions. Those 2 areas are educating the community about history, diversity, and inclusion, and the other one is adopt consistent policies and systems to navigate bias and behavior. That we're looking for folks that had attended the listening sessions to take part in that committee. We're trying to get students as well. We had over 100 students that were part of those listening sessions, and we're working on putting that group together. They're going to meet on January 19th, so if there are folks that are interested, please let Aaron Russo know. if you can't find her contact information, make sure to contact myself or Aaron, or just a general superintendent's email, and we'll get that out to people. The second piece is I'd like to have the board think about in January, in a second meeting in January or the first meeting in February, I'd like to invite Jeff Benet here, who is the Franklin County Education, I don't have his whole title, and Jackie may help me with it, but he is the head of Indian education for Franklin County. I don't think I have that exactly corrected what his official title is, but he, Jeff and I have been doing some work together, and I think we don't get to see all the data about how Native Americans in Franklin County that we capture in our schools, and the information that he has. And
his title is, he's the Director of Indian Education at Franklin Northwest, but the grant that they have covers Franklin County.
Franklin County.
But it's housed at now the Missisquoi Valley School District.
Right. Yeah. And so Jeff and I, we've been talking about more ways of being more inclusive around the Abenaki in Franklin County and all Native Americans. And Jeff would like to come and talk to you about some of the things that are hard to capture through the lived experience of Native Americans. And I think it would be a good training opportunity for this board, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
100% behind that.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
So those are the two things I bring you around those topics.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, let's see, 7C, setting goals. See Grant sitting next to it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna outdo Bill. He had two things. I have three.
Whoa.
So, but they're from the exact same PowerPoint that we got from the equity group. So they gave us 5 recommendations from those listening sessions, as Bill noted. And the goals committee has decided that we think we can create goals around all 5, 2 of which will come from sitting in with goals committee members on the 2 topics that Bill mentioned. The other 3 topics where we think we can develop some goals were summarized as ensuring rigorous academics and expectations. That was one sort of focus area. Another focus area was provide services and infrastructure to support students and families. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think you just saw a presentation about that.
Yeah, we saw a presentation, so that's pertinent. And the other is create opportunities for family and community engagement, which is also, I think, pretty relevant right now. We had a really long discussion and a good discussion of the rigorous academics at the last meeting. We're going to continue the discussions on the student support structures and opportunities for community engagement. And hopefully distill that all down into a set of goals and bring back to the board.
Is there a timeline for that, or?
What did we say? We're gonna reconvene in January.
Yeah, the 12th.
Was it the 12th, 15th, somewhere in there, second or third week.
Susan helped me with my calendar the other day.
And now that we have some experience discussing a topic, hopefully we can get through 2 in one meeting and get some recommendations back to you guys.
It's the
sooner rather
12th.
than later.
So the meeting's on the 12th, but it won't be by the 12th.
The meeting's on the 12th.
Okay, got it,
Yeah.
okay.
So we can get through a couple topics then. The challenge is turning it into a goal, right?
Okay, okay. All right. Good job. Moving forward with that, thank you. Any other discussion on that or questions? Okay. Negotiations update, 7D, Bill?
I think Nelda.
Oh, Nilda, sorry.
Hi. So the group had their first meeting for the professional staff, and we're working on setting dates for subsequent meetings and getting our ground rules in shape. That's about all I have.
Jack, sorry.
So
Just
for
go ahead,
the, Joanna and I met with the educational support staff along with Bill, and we worked on the ground rules and setting dates. So that's where we are.
Okay. And when are the next meetings for you? Like, when's the first
It's going to
meeting?
be on the alternate Wednesdays, alternate the board meeting Wednesdays.
Starting January.
Yeah, January, February, we made dates all the way out through March, but it's basically every Wednesday that's not a board meeting.
Okay, so twice a month, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the next one would be the 11th.
Yeah.
The 11th,
11th
and then,
of
no, then the one for professionals is the January 26th,
Yep.
right? Okay. Thank you. 7E, governance policy, second reading, attachments, that's also attachment 7E. Looking for a motion to adopt A54 appointment of superintendent, A55 delegation to the superintendent, A56 superintendent authority, A57 superintendent succession policies that were warned for possible adoption on December 7th. Could I please have a motion?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Grant, thank you. Any discussion? Questions? Okay. All right, go ahead and take a vote. Al?
Hey, yes.
Nilda?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Katie? Okay. Peter?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Ryer?
Yep.
Joanna?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Nina, yes, and Katie, yes. Motion carries 9-0. Thank
I
you.
thought you sneezed.
No, that's okay. Thank you. All right, item 7F, C51 weapons policy revision, second reading. Attachment 7F2, looking for a motion to adopt the revised, what?
So moved.
Wait until I read it, Al, just a second. The administration recommends a motion to adopt the revised C51 weapons policy that was warned for possible adoption on December 7th. And can I please have a motion? Al? Can I have a second?
Nilda.
Nilda, second, okay. Any discussion? Okay, yes, no, okay. All right, go ahead and take a vote. Al?
Yes.
Nilda?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Ryer?
Yep.
Joanna?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
And Nina, yes. Motion carries 9-0. Thank you. All right. 7G, the E21 non-school literature distribution policy, first reading. Attachment 7G as well. And looking for a motion to warn E21 non-school literature distribution policy as the first reading for possible adoption at the next meeting on January 4th, 2023. Could I please have a motion?
So moved.
Grant, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you, Susan. All right, any discussion?
Can we have a summary?
Yeah, well, at the last meeting,
Yeah.
I was trying to go with everything that was heard, and as you remember, there were three options. There was the option to allow no distribution of non-school literature. There was the second one. There were two model policies. There was that one. The second one, which is the one I created into this, which is where it's at the discretion of the superintendent or school principal for whatever is distributed that's non-school literature. And then the third one was that was about political material and was at the discretion of the superintendent or the principal. So I went with I tried to take everything into consideration and actually watch the video again to kind of remind myself, and thought this was kind of where people were landing, but I have no tie to it as much as just trying to serve the board, and thought this was kind of where you were at. So if I misread that, let me know. This is the first reading, so this is a good time to have that.
So someone goes to the principal and then goes to the superintendent?
No, it's one or the other. It's one or the other.
How about if you disagree with the principal?
Then we got some work to do.
Okay.
So if the principal says no, and they want to say, okay, well then I'm going to go to the superintendent. Is that kind of the
Well, that's the way everything works in the district when,
Right,
when
right.
someone
Just
wants to appeal
changing it.
something from the principal. it comes
So
to
there
us.
is,
There's always that appeal process. I mean, that's the way we work with everything
Yeah.
around here.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So I just have a concern. So if someone says, I want to distribute this at the school, and the principal says no, and then they say, well, so-and-so distributed something of the exact same nature 3 weeks ago, and I feel, it says, no, under no discrimination. What happens? I mean, my concern here is that, like, I feel like we're leaving a lot of discretion, and I worry that, I just worry that we're setting it up for someone to feel like they're not being treated equally.
I hear
And you can just
I-
say you're
I-
dumb, and that doesn't.
No,
I totally appreciate that.
I wasn't gonna say it that way, Ryan.
I appreciate.
This is what I was gonna
totally
say.
appreciate it.
This is what I was gonna say. There is nothing in this world that's black and white.
Yeah, no,
And so there's subjectiveness. And I believe that, do we make mistakes at times? We do. And we learn from those mistakes and we adjust the system when we go forward.
Yeah.
I would rather give the people that I work with the ability to use their good sense, and I already know and worked with this team well enough. When they have a question, a little tickling in the back of the head, they call me. I can look at my 3 colleagues back there, and it's usually a text, like, hey, get a hold of me when you can, and I'm thinking about this. So, when you asked about, what if we're in different places, the reason I pause, we usually aren't, because usually if we think we're gonna be in different places, there's a conversation going on.
Right, but the policy might outlast you, and then we're not sure what the next, how it's gonna react. to
I
the
understand
next-
that, and I trust our educational system. It's not about the person, it's about the ability of what you hire for the people either at a principalship or a superintendent to be able to do that work.
And I agree, and that's why I think these things need to be crystal clear,
Yeah.
so that when the new person, if a new person comes
Right.
in, they can say, oh, okay, this is what it is.
And that's part of the learning we do at this table too. There's times when I'm gonna make mistakes at this table, or I make mistakes in the work, and I learn from the board or the community telling me, hey, you gotta do something different.
This is what it currently is.
No, this is what I just put down, was from listening to discussion.
But let's say we pass this.
Yeah,
It means this is what currently is gonna be. It doesn't mean that next year it can't be changed.
you would just have to change the policy.
Right, okay.
Correct. Go ahead, Grant.
Just kind of maybe nitpicky, but I think the default position of the policy is to allow distribution, so long as it doesn't violate one of the criteria.
Yeah, it is.
So maybe it's more accurate to say that you would limit the distribution than permit it, because it's already permitted.
Mhm.
Would just be a clearer way of saying that.
Yeah, it's basically that first allow in the first sentence.
Yeah.
Remove.
So it's allowed unless it falls into one of those categories, the prohibited categories, and then it's really just a matter of reviewing it to make sure doesn't fall into those categories, in which case you would say no. But if it doesn't, there's no real.
Instead of permit, I think you said limit.
Right, so this says permit, and it would really be, you would be limiting the distribution. I don't know if that's just semantics, might be.
No. Okay.
I would just wanna make sure that this is exactly what it is, and somebody said we can change it, and I think we're already showing that we have a hard time changing stuff that we do. Sometimes we do it, we think it's cast in stone. So to say we can change it later, I'm gonna think that might be a struggle. I think it needs to be exactly what we need now.
Is there a category that you don't think is, I mean, the 7 categories seem pretty comprehensive. in
No,
terms of
I
things that you'd wanna
understand
limit.
those. Like I said, I just wanna make sure that there's no wiggle room in it. Jesus, sorry. New teeth. But I think it needs to be exactly.
What, Al?
I got to interrupt for a minute. There's
Okay.
two distinctions. When you're voting on a policy and you're sitting there saying, we can change it next time, what you're voting for is a procedure then. because a policy, if you're gonna make a policy, that shouldn't be for just from here to then.
I guess, so I was saying, I guess my point is that it's a policy. Policies, there's the opportunity to change policies over the years, and we've done that. Not necessarily with this,
No,
but in
but
general.
policy it should only be changed annually every year if you're going to do it. You can't just do it midterm.
I understand.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're saying, Al.
It's there's an opportunity to.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess what is your wiggle room?
Well,
concern?
it's between the principal and the superintendent. It's one or the other, because there's potential for disagreement, and right now Bill is saying, well, we can work it out. Well, what happens if we get a superintendent that says, no, it's my way or the highway, and are we willing to live with that? Because that doesn't say it here. It says this or this. It says principal or superintendent.
So would you be happier if it said the principal as the first and then the superintendent? Like, I mean, would that would stop that wiggle room?
Well, yeah, one or the other, yes.
Right.
I don't see it.
When you share things, that doesn't always work out.
So maybe the first run has to be the building's principal, and if you don't agree.
Mhm. I mean, that's the way it is anyway. The principal works for you, Bill, and if you don't like what they do, then you can do something about
I
it.
should be doing something about it.
Right.
Right, I mean, there's a lot of the policies that say superintendent or designee.
Right.
I frankly, the way we run, because of the size system we are, I have to have designees.
Okay.
There aren't that many hours.
Should be one.
It should at least be consistent, right? There's places in here where we say superintendent, and then there's at least one place where we say superintendent slash principal.
Right.
So whatever we choose, we should have the same everywhere.
So if we were to change all of the superintendent to principal, I would be on board with this.
Superintendent to principal?
Right.
So only the principal would make the final call?
Yes. And obviously, Bill has the final call over everything, because that's his job.
Okay. So that should
So
be
cutting
clear
out the
here.
middle, it's.
Right.
That
Just
should
not
be
saying this or this.
And if, it just sounds like if they have a question, they'll consult Bill
Right,
anyway.
exactly.
That's just, okay, all right.
So leave it as principal,
Right.
because you can always go to Bill. Right?
Okay. Well, the first paragraph is the one that says that the superintendent can limit it. So everywhere else, we can have it say principal.
Right.
And then
Right.
on that first paragraph, the superintendent has the authority to
Over.
veto or override that.
Yep.
You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? All right.
I'll make those changes.
Okay.
I think I've caught them all, but
Yep.
I'll
nope,
check. Would
good,
you like
good.
it, you're under a motion and you have a warrant vote, so I just want to ask a question.
Mhm.
Do you want to vote it to signify you had your first reading, I bring the changes back the next time, or would you like to do a first reading with the changes at the next one? Your policy on policy allows you to do it, where you can vote that you had it first read, I make the changes, and then the second time you can adopt it.
That's kind of what I'm going towards.
Sure.
Yeah.
Everybody okay with that?
Okay, just want to make sure we were clear.
Yep, no, that's what I was gonna.
Okay.
Okay. Did,
Do we need to amend the motion?
Huh?
Do we need to amend the?
No, no. Nilda, and Al, did you hear that?
I didn't hear all of it.
I was just asking Al if people were fine with this being the first reading. I think I got all the notes on the changes, and that at the next meeting, I'll have the changes, we'll warn it with the changes for a second reading. And I was asking all the members if they were good with that.
I'm not good with that. I want to see it in its final form first. Too much discussion of back and forth for me to feel like we might not miss something.
This is only the first,
Sorry.
this is only the first reading, Nilda.
It's the second reading. We're not adopting.
I know,
Oh, okay.
get it? I'm sorry to be a pain, that's my opinion.
No, it's okay.
You can still do the vote.
No, I know.
And I can say no,
I
and
know,
you can pass
I know,
it, right?
I know. Al, are you okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we good to? Okay, we'll take a vote.
So what are we voting on?
What are we voting on?
Okay,
To advance this to the second.
yeah, we'll advance this to the second reading with the changes we just discussed for the updates.
And you'll bring it to us, and that's what change.
Okay. Everybody, is that good? Everybody clear? Okay.
Yes.
All right, Al?
What are we voting on?
We're voting
What are we
on,
voting on?
we're voting on the 7G for the first reading with changes we just said that we're going to make, so we can move it forward to a second reading for the next one to adopt it. For 7G, the non-school literature distribution policy,
Yeah, I understand that,
okay?
but we're gonna want a meeting based on the changes that we made tonight.
For the second reading.
So I think we should amend the motion based on Nilda's concern, just so everyone can be clear on what they're voting on.
So first we have to vote this one down.
Yeah, we didn't actually, that wasn't what the motion was.
There was, because there was a motion to warn E21 school distribution policy as the first reading. We could either amend that motion to say to warn E21 as amended as the first reading, so that we vote on it next
Well, we're
time.
not, but we're not amending, we're amending it for the second reading.
There's a
though.
motion on the table though, and that motion isn't currently what you're saying we're voting on. So we'd have to amend the motion on the table. We just do a friendly amendment if the people wanted to, and then we can vote on it. But right now, we're voting on a motion that just says to advance what's written there to a second reading.
Okay.
So we can either vote that down or we can amend that motion.
All right, I guess we can amend the motion then.
Yeah.
So do I have to have?
Yeah,
So
we could do
I would-
friendly,
I
just
would-
person who.
I think I made the motion.
Yeah, so do you want to amend the motion, Grant?
Yeah, so I'd amend the motion to warn E21 non-school litter distribution policy with changes as noted as the first reading for possible adoption at the next board meeting on January 4th.
Okay. So, thank you. So we have the amended motion. Al and Nilda, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Well, actually, Susan was this, are you okay with?
Wait, don't you need the person that
Yes,
made
yeah.
the motion in the first place?
I made the
and amended
motion.
it?
Yes,
I made the motion
yes,
and I amended
yeah,
it.
yes, Nilda, yeah, and Grant just amended it. We just amended it.
Yeah.
And then I was just gonna,
He-
yeah, and Susan, I was just gonna say Susan seconded it, and I was just gonna say if she was okay with it.
She's the one that needs to second the amendment, though, is my understanding.
Yeah, yes, I just, yes,
I'll make that motion.
thank you.
Or your second motion.
I'll second the motion.
Whatever it does.
All right, thank you, Grant, Susan. Go ahead and take a vote. Al?
Yes.
Nilda?
No,
Susan?
No.
Katie?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes?
Grant?
Yes.
Ryer?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
And Nina. Okay, so motion to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 7 and,
7 to 2.
7, 1.5.
Just one.
7 and 1.5, motion carries. Thank you.
No, I don't love
Let me just step out on the floor for a minute. When somebody makes an amendment to the main motion, it does not have to be seconded by the person that made the original second, nor does it have to be the person that makes the motion. An amendment is made by someone else outside of that first grouping to add to. So just for a point of order.
Thank you.
Okay,
so
thanks,
Al, I
Al.
appreciate that, if I may speak. but, that's not how we've operated in the past.
Yeah.
Point of order,
So,
that's,
I mean,
it's a friendly
I
amendment,
appreciate
and
it.
that's how it operates, so
Yeah,
I just wanna say.
that's what Nova's telling
Yeah.
me, yeah. Okay, we'll just, yeah, thank you. All right, 7H, early retirement request. This is actually a personnel matter that also has some HIPAA information that we actually have to go into executive session for. So we'll save that. Anything else?
No, that's what I was gonna say, I had the conversation, but I do not want to relay it open session and under personnel.
Okay.
You have an exception under Vermont's open meeting law to protect that information.
Okay, thank you. 7I, budget, Martha?
I don't know if Bill, if you wanted
Oh.
to kick it off first.
Sure, I'll kick it off first. And then, this second budget, I gave the board 2 memos on this, one with the original, and then to give you more information, last night one came as well. You saw the first draft back at the last meeting, and that was a budget that was produced based on the target estimations due to inflation, and we use that to create a first draft of a budget. From there, at the same time, one of the questions that the board had as we went to this new process was, we'd like that, the board wanted to know what were the needs of the school, and I said I'd let you know when that what those were, and this is the meeting which we're doing that. So I wanted to kind of step you through some of the process that we went through. At the last meeting, the only information we had was the tax commissioner's letter that increased the dollar yield by almost $2,200, which reduced the tax rate, I said at that point, over 8 cents. At the same time, with all the budget targets that we had with estimations for increases due to inflation, it gave us an increase in our expense budget of 6.8%, which increased the spending per equalized pupil of 9.6%. Martha went through and told us about how many data points we didn't have at that time. From that meeting to this meeting, the past 2 weeks, a lot of data points have come in. So we'll go through those all with you. I'm gonna kind of keep you at a high level in my first memo, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing to you, but one of the things that with that big decrease in the tax rate, this is, I believe is a point in time where we have an opportunity, and as you saw in Alexis's presentation along with other student support areas, we have the opportunity to move things from federal grants, which are going down, to the local budget to stabilize them. Because I can't guarantee them that in next year, knowing what some of the economic projections are, I don't think we'll get the same dollar yield that we got this year. So on the second page of that first memo I gave you, I kind of walked you through from last meeting to this meeting that there was an 8 cents reduction. Our equalized pupils came back with about somewhere between 65 and 70 less equalized pupils. As I told you earlier when we talked about enrollment, our enrollment's actually going up, but that's because of pre-K enrollment. So it's pre-K without getting into all the technical details, a pre-K child doesn't give you as many equalized people as a K through 12 child does. So that loss of equalized pupils brought the tax cent back up 3.6 cents. But the principals did a really good job with their budget when they went out to build their budget, and it almost lowered the tax rate another 2 cents based on what they had. We, in the same time, have seen changes in our revenues from the feds, our local revenues merely in grants of almost $500,000. So that's going to, if we were to replace that, and that's within the 1.2 million that I was talking to you, there are 3 cents to look at, is about a cent or more. I have 2.5 cents on this year. So we're still down. If from last meeting I told you we were down 8 cents on the tax rate, with everything that's happened that's in this local budget, without the additional money I was asking for, we're still down almost 4 cents. You see, it's 3.8 cents, and these are estimates right now, so I want to really say these are estimates. I worked with seeing this opportunity and knowing that that positions that we have funded from local consolidated federal grants and our ESSER grants, and that a huge amount of our support for families and students who need extra supports are coming out of federal grants, trying to stabilize those. We worked as a leadership team for over a week, looking at what our priorities are. Our priorities were really around student supports, equity, and I should say student family needs and support, equity, and academic support for kids. And doing that, we looked at bringing back $1.2 million of federal funds into local, which is 3 cents. I can keep going on this, Martha, or do you want me to stop before I go into the additional and explain where we are without the additional 1.2 mil with all the other budget information? I think that would be good before
I
we
can
go.
take it from there.
Yeah.
So in the packet that was sent to you, I have my original format that I've used in many years past, which is the first page, which shows the very first section is the exact same information I provided to the school board at the last meeting. None of those numbers have changed. All the numbers that have changed are on the bottom part of that sheet. So the assumption budget we had brought was a 6.81% increase over the prior year. With the principal's actual proposed budget, we're at 6.11% over last year's budget. The education spending figure, as Bill mentioned, has grown based on the reduction of grant funds and or other areas where we have other local funding. And just to be clear, these are still estimates. I'm still working on trying to get some of those revenue projections a little bit better tied down. I'm still waiting for many pieces of information from the Agency of Education to be able to nail those revenues down a little bit closer. So that number most likely is going to change. It could go up or down. At this point, I'm not quite sure. I've got the new equalized pupil count in there, which is showing at a 2.69% decrease of equalized pupils from last year. That is 67 equalized pupils at this point. That is still just the preliminary run, so those numbers still might change. I don't anticipate them to change considerably, maybe 1 or 2 equalized pupils possibly. So that number still is possible to change. So that brings us to an estimated per pupil spending of $20,887, which is currently right now showing at a 13.06% increase, which that is the figure that would show, sorry. That's the, sorry.
Pause, Martha.
That's the figure that would be printed on the ballot. The percentage increase. And so below that, I have just broken out, like I have in the past, the different areas, what the cost is in this proposed budget. So that's basically the general overview. And then, as I always have in the past, I've included the summary of expenditures as well as the summary of revenues page. And the summary of revenues page, which is the, I don't know, the 4th or 5th page in the packet, there are multiple sections that have highlighted squares. Those are the areas where I'm still waiting for better numbers to come in, so that you can see that I don't have all the final numbers that we need at this point. And then I have given you the estimated tax rate impact as for what we know of as of right now, which is showing that 3.8 cent decrease in education spending tax rate at this point. That's what I have right now. Unless anybody has any questions, I'll send it back over to Bill. I know I did that really quickly, so if you have questions, shout.
Bill, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Has it always been, and maybe it just, I never saw it before, but I'm seeing it right now, has academic and behavior intervention always been together?
What do you?
According to,
In the summary of expenditures for FY '24,
Oh, okay.
there is, underneath vocational tuition, academic and behavior intervention are together in the same item, and I don't, doesn't look familiar to
I'm
me.
trying to see which page you're on, just so I
I'm
can-
sorry, four out of 7.
4 out of 7.
so that's based on state coding. So the state does require us to code those in the same area.
The same area.
Mhm.
So, Joanna, I would just say, because sometimes it took me a while to figure this out, the way we look at things, and I'm saying this because you work in a school, and what the handbook 2 for the Vermont State for coding for budget is very different sometimes.
Okay, I've
And
just
it
never seen
does-
those two together.
And so, everything here is done by handbook 2 for what we have to do for
Okay.
budget coding by the Vermont State rules for business managers. And I'll let
Yeah.
Martha take on from there, because that's about all I need to know. Martha's the expert.
So, just for context, last year, right, we had I wanna say it was 8 or 9% equalized spending, increase in equalized spending for equalized pupil.
If you look at, I don't have it right here. Martha, do you have last year's? Can you?
I'm just going off memory. I think that's about right.
Yeah, our equalized spending for last year ended up being an 8% increase.
And that corresponded to a slight increase, I think, in the actual, cents
Tax
per
rate.
hundred on the tax.
What was the tax rate change last year,
The tax-
education?
For at least
The
some.
tax rate.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Martha.
Okay, the tax rate last year for education spending before the CLA actually was 10 cents less than the year before.
But then after, it wound up being close to, did the tax rate actually go down? I can't remember.
Yes, it did.
It did, okay.
Yes. Even after the CLA, each community had a few
A
cents
few cents
less.
reduction.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so we're basically talking about the same thing this year.
We're in the same phenomenon
Just
this
with a
year.
bigger number on the ballot.
It's because 2 years of the dollar yield really increasing.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
So, but the number will be much bigger. It'll look like everyone's getting, what'll be advertised as a 13%
Yeah.
increase in our taxes.
Yep,
Not your taxes, but.
Well, no,
well,
but
People
like,
will interpret it that way.
exactly,
Right.
yeah, that's my point, is
well,
that,
except, I don't think we should necessarily believe they will, because they got it last year.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point.
Right.
we're gonna need to make sure we do lots of good communication.
Yep.
Explained it
Other questions about the budget? I want to keep the second piece, I'm trying to hold the second piece so people are really clear on what's here in the budget piece.
So, one of the pieces that we will need to do before the end of the meeting at the next meeting is that we will need to set the tuition rate, which is another item on the agenda, so never mind. Never mind.
Have we, so Bill, oftentimes you go and get information from other school districts? And, let us know what, the
Right.
current state of affairs are?
Yeah, so I
And-
can update you from the last time.
Okay,
Last-
I'm interested in, just like when I see a 20,000, right, that's a huge increase in terms of, per pupil, not per pupil cost, excuse me,
Yeah.
but the tuition rate. What's that like? What are the increases?
So I can't tell you about tuition, what I can tell you is about percentages happening at each school. Most people haven't done cost per equalized pupil yet, I'll have that for you in January. But we're seeing anywhere from 5 to 25% increase in expenditures. 5 is the lowest, and it's quickly getting up into the 10%. Because I'm not the only superintendent presenting changes to affect, we're all seeing our grants go away. And so people are thinking this is the year to put the money in to stabilize for student needs. So. And it's happening across the state from what, I know Champlain Valley pretty well, but talking to some others, they're doing the same.
Okay. Could you get information for us regarding
I can get you
tuition?
ranges. Tuition,
Is that too much of a variable?
that's too much of a variable, and that won't be, that, no one has to set, not everyone has to set their tuition until the second meeting in January, so it'll be hard to get you that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see what it was like in,
I think I mean, Martha, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our tuition's pretty competitive.
Yeah, our tuition rate is fairly competitive, yes. And again, you can set your tuition rate to whatever number you want it to be, but at the end of the fiscal year, you have to submit all of your expenditures and revenue information as well as your student enrollment information. And the state calculates what your allowable tuition really is. And if you've charged too much or not charged enough, then you are able to either bill back or you have to pay back. So an announced tuition rate is really based on the actual costs after the fact.
And historically, how have we wound up?
Our tuition rates, I want to say last year was the first year that we've actually had to bill back some districts because we've usually come pretty close to the tuition that we announced. So it's very rare that we are that far off that we actually have to bill back or send money back.
Okay. But last year, can you clarify again?
I don't have that information in front of me right now. I'd have to go back and pull it out because I don't remember the specifics.
Okay.
The tuition is actually just it's a piece of our revenue stream, but it's only about $3 million out of our $64 million budget.
Yeah, I think we put a lot more importance on it than it actually is to our overall budget. I'm not saying that $3 million isn't important. It is.
But at some point, that's gonna be an agenda item, is the tuition, right?
Yeah, you see, the
So why
board
don't we
sets.
talk about it then? It would
The
seem
board
like
sets the
that's-
tuition,
Right.
next meeting.
Right.
Next meeting, we're gonna set,
Right.
yeah.
And then we'll have that information.
Okay. Right, thank you.
So if people aren't, if the board's okay, I'd like to move on to the second part, which is, I asked the board in the memo to discuss, with the tax rate, I'm proposing us to use 3 cents, or what is about the equivalent of $1.2 million, to move positions that are grant funded into local budget. You saw some of those tonight, not all of those are in the student needs. There are 3 major areas. Equity, social emotional behavior, mental health supports, and academic supports. As I covered in the second memo I sent you, I gave you an idea of each of those areas. We have a loss of about $480,000 from the feds. That's direct this year, so if we didn't cover that with this extra tax money, we'd have to go cut that. That 1.2 million equates to 10.5 FTE, and this was in the second memo I sent you, and we're trying to leave some money because of the good work that's happening with the community right now around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't want to pre-program the actions they may suggest, but I want to leave some resources there to make sure we can implement them right away. And you'll see that there's some direct support there for student family support services. And I gave you some details on that. We didn't put that in this proposal. The leadership team worked really hard on our priorities and what's going to affect students. We looked at data from literacy. We looked at our behavior data. We looked at our climate data, which I haven't brought you. I want to bring you soon from our student climate surveys, which was very positive, and we believe that that's due to the supports that are in there for kids. And Alexis will be back to share that good news with all of you, hopefully very shortly in a meeting to come. And I'd be glad to take any, I was trying to help us to keep this meeting as compact and efficient as possible by giving you the information in the memo. I'd be glad to take any questions. And then, so my question is, the board in favor of us using this, bringing you a budget next time with this 1.2 million moved into the local?
And you need a decision.
I don't need a, I don't need, I
Not
don't need a
tonight,
motion, but I need to have a really good sense of what this board
Okay.
wants, so I bring you a prepared budget next
Okay.
time.
I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
All right, Grant, do you be in favor of it?
Yeah, but that's not what we saw just now, right? It's
No,
not-
you didn't see that.
No.
I'd put this in and we bring it to you.
Okay.
Joanna?
And then do we know what that does to the equalized spending for those people?
It's gonna raise it more.
It's gonna raise it.
As I said to you on the bottom of the memo, if we did that, it's gonna bring it to 15.74.
Okay, that's the number. it's about.
And
Thank you.
the overall expense budget would be at almost 8%.
Okay,
Ryan, you'd be,
yeah.
what's your feel on that?
Yeah, no,
Yep.
I mean,
Ev-
yeah, I think
Okay.
it's.
Jack, I know.
Yeah.
Susan?
What you're doing is you're realizing that some of the federal funds are diminishing.
Yeah,
So to keep the programs at the level that they're currently at,
yeah.
you want to shift money over into our regular budget to keep the level of support at the current
Current levels.
levels. Yeah,
Yep.
that makes
In order-
sense to me.
In order to make sure we're not ripping 10 positions.
Right. It
And
wouldn't be
you're
a
gonna have
total
to-
of 10, because what we're doing is we know ESSER's gonna go away after next school year. So we're going into it a little early, and other districts are taking some of the same strategy. I know that it's about, of that 1.2, about 480 is protecting ones we'd have to RIF this year. Or reduce or find other funding mechanisms.
And Katie, you're good with it
Yeah,
too?
yeah.
Al, Nilda, any thoughts?
I'm good.
Okay, Al?
No, good.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so to look at
That's all I
anything
needed.
else? Okay.
That's all I
No,
needed. I just wanted to
wanted to
make
give everybody
sure.
a second to look at it.
Yeah,
that's
no,
all.
I did too, and I want some direction from the board, so
Okay,
thank you, I
you're good?
appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments for budget? Okay, item 7J is the construction manager bid award.
Yeah.
So I have to open
So
this
before
here.
you do a motion, I know we usually motion, but this is a construction management bid, and it has to be open and read, and then a motion can be done. The state is very particular on that we do this the right way, so I'm opening this for you.
Could you stand at the microphone like an award ceremony?
Probably. We have one bid. say the wrong thing.
too.
We have one bid from Engelbert Construction. And either I can read it or you can read it. How would you like to do this?
Why
Amy?
don't you go ahead, I'll let
Okay.
you.
And I know Aaron's gonna take these into, we have a bid form over there, so we have one, bid from Engelbert Construction, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. For the fixed fee for pre-construction services is $107,124. The percentage of construction cost fee for construction services is 4%. The fee for construction services, assuming a $5,500,000 cost of construction at the above percentage, is $220,000 straight. The change order markup percentage is 5%. The fee for change order markup, assuming $165,000 pre-markup change order cost at above percentage, is $8,250. Phase 1 general conditions, cost per week, are $19,661. The Phase 2 general conditions, cost per week, are $36,491. The total Phase 1 fixed general conditions cost for 12 weeks is $235,938. The total Phase 2 fixed fee for general conditions cost per week times 8 weeks is $291,933. The construction manager contingency, which is estimated at 5% of the total cost of construction, is $275,000. The 100% performance and bond payment assumed for our $5.5 million construction cost is $37,325. The sum of all items in the bid above is $1,175,570. I have to let you know we've only had one bidder. Under Vermont bid law, we must have 3 bidders for any bid over $40,000. We have to go to the Agency of Education and ask for a bid waiver. When there's only one bidder for construction, which we're not the only ones that's happening to right now with all the work that's going on with ESSER work. So we're gonna have to go through that. So I would recommend that you make a motion awarding this work to Engelberth Construction. There is a written recommendation in your board packet there, but per AOE bid waiver approval, so that we're not sunk into awarding this without that waiver. And that's what I would recommend to the board. And this is the project that we've been talking about all along.
Okay, I see what it said. Okay.
Do you see it there?
Yep, I do. I
Okay.
didn't have it on my
Yeah,
thing.
no, we just added
Okay.
it today.
No, oh, okay. If I can just read it here. All right, so the administration recommends to move to award the contract for construction manager services for the MRUSD capital improvement ESSER project to Engelberth Construction, and to authorize the superintendent to enter into a contract of these services contingent upon a bid waiver approval from the Agency of Education.
So moved.
Thank you, Al. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joanna. Any discussion? Okay, anybody? Al, Nilda, anything? Discussion? Okay, questions? Okay, go ahead and vote. Al?
Yes.
Nilda?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Grant?
Abstain.
Oh, you're abstaining? Okay.
Abstain.
Abstain. Ryer?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
And Nina. So we have 7.5, well, wait, sorry, and one abstention.
Yeah. So 801. 801.
801, right. Okay. All right, Nilda, you're on for new business.
Thank you.
All right, first, I just wanted to thank Al for that correction on the amended motion. I think he's right, because I looked it up. I don't know how I crossed that in my head, but, all right, we're under new business, and I just want to intro this a little bit. So MRUSD has been using the district liaison officer process for 1.5 years. We are still receiving community commentary from those who want the SRO back and those that do not. We have received reports from administration regarding the program. All parties are very passionate about their perspectives. We need to discuss as a board evaluating the liaison officer program and change. Is that done by placing this item that we're suggesting on the ballot to get that discussion going? I'd like to request a motion to start this conversation.
Nilda, I'd like to make a motion that MRUSD allow non-binding referendums to appear on our ballots if they meet the following conditions. They're advertised as non-binding with the explanation as to what that entails, meaning that it's advisory only. The petitions have 5% of the voters, in the MRUSD. The petitions are legal petitions, which include the petition language on the top of each page. The petition be submitted to the board at least 47 days prior to the vote, and the petition contain each signer's printed name, signature, and address. And those are all the conditions that were on the letter from our attorney.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Joanna?
No, I don't want to second it. I'm confused.
Okay. Can we have a second to
I
continue
second.
the discussion?
Katie seconded it. Neil, oh.
Thanks, Katie.
You roll.
All right, Joanna?
Okay, so I'm confused because it says new business, board willingness to put non-statutory items on the ballot. Possible non-binding item. So are we doing A right now or B?
Well,
Because if we're doing A, then we're not supposed to be, I thought that the whole point of this conversation tonight was not to have it focused on the SRO, that we were going to talk about it being more of a, are we open to putting petitions, out there to the community? So this is exactly what we said we were not going to do.
Could I point out that SRO was not part of the, I did not mention the word or the letters SRO in the
I think you're
petition.
supposed to raise your hand.
So, you're right, as far as, Peter didn't mention that, but I was just trying to sort of focus us as to how we got here.
I understand that, but what we talked about last time, Nilda, the reason why we are here is because you did go forward and make a unilateral decision to have this conversation and to allow somebody to come here and do this. And we made a decision as a board last time that we were gonna have a conversation about this as a process, not about the SRO specific situation.
Grant?
So
Yeah.
I think where the confusion is Peter in his motion used a non-binding referendum term, which is what is in this part B of this agenda item.
Not for me.
No?
No, what's confusing for me is that you began this conversation describing that this topic was about the SRO situation in our community. That is my confusion, because we specifically said we were not gonna have a conversation about that we were gonna talk about the process of whether or not to allow community members to put forth petitions about things that we've already voted on. That was the conversation that's supposed to be had this evening.
I don't disagree with you.
Then why did you present the topic that way?
I guess because I felt it needed some framing.
I disagree.
Okay. How's the rest of the board feel? Did I screw that up? Go ahead, I can take it, man. I have cancer, I can take anything.
So I feel like, and I wasn't at the last meeting, although I've reviewed the notes. I feel like the question has to be about, are we gonna allow petitions to be voted on as a non-binding, not necessarily encasing it in the SRO?
Right.
Okay, and I don't disagree with that. I totally agree.
Or at least having that discussion.
Not yet.
Grant?
Yeah, because a lot of times when we have motions like this, they're written in front of us. This one wasn't. Could you repeat it?
Sure.
Sorry.
Yep. No, I was just gonna ask.
Kind of
you
go
to
through
do
it
that, too.
slowly,
Yep.
sorry.
Slowly?
Yeah.
Okay. Move that MRUSD allow non-binding referendums to appear on our ballots if they meet the following conditions. And the conditions were the ones outlined by H.O. Lynn in the letter that he gave us. Advertised as non-binding with an explanation as to what that entails, meaning you're telling the public up front, we want your opinion, but we don't have to listen to you. And that's what it is. And I think that if that is the fact, and it is the fact, then that needs to be right up front. Petitions have 5% of the voters in MRUSD. The petitions are legal petitions, which include the petition language on the top of each page. The petition be submitted to the board at least 47 days prior to the vote, and the petition contained each signer's printed name, signature, and address. And I would point out that this obviously is not to do with SROs because we don't have a petition before us.
Yeah, I think your motion is the right motion, right? But the context, I agree, is a little bit odd, right?
The what is?
The context.
I didn't take.
I don't think it was you, Peter.
And it was the
I
transition.
specifically said, it was not
Yeah.
what Peter said. It was how it was framed in the beginning.
Oh, okay, then.
It was the transition
Peter, go
that threw
ahead.
me as well. We had this context of SRO, and then we went into the motion, and it rattled off pretty quickly, so I
And
wanted to
that I
make sure that I
understand,
understood it.
and if we're gonna focus on the words Nilda said prior to the motion,
Yeah.
we're off Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
We should be talking about
We
the
should be talking
motion.
about the motion, sure. And the motion was to allow?
To allow,
To
and,
allow.
and I think according to Robert's Rules, as I have first shot at explaining, because I made the motion, and that is that we, at times, we're very lucky, we get some very people who are gifted, they sit before us and they talk, they give us their opinions, and we listen to it. And I think that's wise, and we do a good job listening to it. There's also a large portion of our society that cannot do that. They have what's called glossophobia. They're afraid to speak in public. And I think their opinion is just as valuable, except they can express their opinion by signing their name on a petition, by going into the ballot box and voting. And I think that if we're gonna use the word equity, which this board, I've heard equity more than I've ever heard it in my life, then we need to be equitable. And that's listen to everybody's opinion. And I think that if they get they have the moxie to sign their name, and I heard someone at one of our meetings say, all I did was sign their name. A signature created this country. A signature can buy us a house, can lose us a house, can make a person free, can make a person in jail. Signatures are important, and if a person cares enough about the topic to sign the signature, then we should listen to them. We should hear their opinion, and that's what the motion is. It's nothing to do with SROs, it has to do with whatever topic they want to talk about, we should listen.
I mean, yeah, it's right. It doesn't change the status quo. We're already allowed to do that.
Well, but the last time we spoke, we said, if they had a petition tonight, if anybody had a petition on any topic,
Yeah.
would we do that? That was the question we were talking about last
Yeah.
time. Would we want to hear their opinion, considering that we might not follow it?
Yeah.
To which my thought is, if you can't hear an opinion and still vote what you think is right, you're probably in the wrong profession sitting on a board, on a public board. You should be able to listen and then do what you think is right. And I believe that those of you that support an issue have the courage to do that. And that's all I'm saying, is that we're gonna need to stand up, because as public officials, we don't have glossophobia. We need to stand up and speak our mind and then vote our conscience.
What it comes back to me though is, are we allowed or are we obligated, right? So, right, we're already allowed to do the thing that the motion covers, right? We don't need a motion to do that. We already can. The question is whether or not we're obligated to put
How do we
something on a
fix
ballot
this?
because we've received a petition. And I don't think the motion captures that.
Well, so you're saying you don't like the motion because it now makes us obligated? To
No,
which
it
I would
doesn't.
say, shouldn't we be?
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't change the status quo. So right now, we are already able to do the thing that you've made a motion to allow us to do.
That's not what we said at the last meeting. At the last meeting, the discussion was, will we do it? If they present a
Will we do it
petition,
and
will we do
are we
it?
allowed to do it are two different questions.
We're allowed to do it. This petition doesn't give us permission. I think this petition, that my motion says that we have to do it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying we have to listen to the public.
So I would disagree. Your motion does not say we have to. It says we're allowed to. If your motion said we must put something on a ballot because we received a petition, then we would have to.
Al? Can I change a word in my motion?
You're getting, read your motion again, Peter.
Let's say motion, not emotion. But it may be a little bit of both. MRUSD allowed non-binding referendums to appear on our ballots if they meet the following condition. And I would like to change allow to must.
No,
Or put must in front of it?
not much.
What would you say?
Is obligated?
See, the problem is that word. We gotta get around.
So, can I interrupt for a second? We've got like 3 questions out there, right? Because the first question was from Joanna, who said, wait a minute, what are we talking about? It sounds like we're addressing the second item under this agenda topic. So then that sort of started this whole thing. Peter made his motion. So do we need to go back and figure out what motion we want to address right now? Because everyone's saying stuff that's factual, but we're not getting any direction out of this. Am I being part of the solution or part of the problem right now?
Well, isn't B directly about SRO? I mean, it says.
We're nowhere.
And that's,
Point of order.
Yeah.
There's no direction right now. I don't know where we're doing. People are just talking over each other. Can we just have like people talk in order so that I can follow the conversation? Right now, it's just people talking. This isn't the way it's supposed to be done. You said in the beginning, we were gonna like have order here, and it's not order. So can we just have a very simple way of talking so that people are recognized and speak to the issue? That's all I want right now.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second, as I understand it, and we're discussing that. There's some debate about the wording of that motion, as I understand it.
And it's just
That's
for,
correct.
it's for item 8A, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
Peter?
it's my understanding, if I look at that agenda item, if the first item passes, then we move on to the second item. If the first item fails, the second item is a moot point because we will already have killed it with the first motion. Does anybody agree with me there?
Yeah, 2 motions on the floor.
We don't have 2 motions on the floor, Al, right now. We have 1 motion, and it's Peter's motion.
Peter, go ahead.
Yes, Peter.
I would say that I kind of agree with you. B says possible non-binding item SRO. My motion has to do with petitions. There is no petition before us. So B is not going to exist. If people had brought a petition, we would talk about that, but there is no petition. I'm talking in general.
Yes.
Which is 8A.
Right.
Yes.
Peter?
I would like to change the wording, which I think might be more controversial and be more fun therefore, to MRUSD is obligated to put non-binding referendums appear on the ballot. That we're obligated to put them on the ballot. If the public comes with a petition, we put it on the ballot. If it meets those conditions.
Okay. We need a second to that.
Second?
Thank you. Now we can discuss that motion, which I believe is the only motion on the floor. You disagree with me, Al?
No?
Okay.
Okay,
So,
I'll start.
discussion.
Okay, Ryer, go ahead.
I'll start. Okay, so 5% is what? 500, 600 people? So 500 or 600 people sign a petition saying, we want bathrooms that are not, that we don't allow, let's say, non-binary or transgender kids to use bathrooms. We then step into a landmine of a situation where we're now a political hot potato debating people's humanity. I mean, when we're talking about civil rights issues, when we're talking about student safety, when we're talking about these aren't things that we should be putting up to vote. We're elected to be representatives of the community. The community has the ability to vote us out. They have the ability to vote on the budget. Both of those things, they can vote and they can use their voice there. If people are afraid to speak in public, they can send an email. We got 2 notes this week from people. like, there are a plethora of ways for people to approach us, to direct comments to us, to get their voice heard. They can sit here at public comment. I've done it for years. This is going to be a bad thing, and it's going to set us up to get all sorts of petitions that will alienate members of our community, that will make members of our community feel unwelcome. This SRO thing will make people in our community feel unwelcome. It will make students who have addressed this body and said, I don't want SROs in our schools, and that has happened. It will make those students feel unwelcome in our community by the people, the vast majority, and I don't think any of us are under any delusion that an SRO vote would pass probably very handily. Let me just finish, Gal. That is not the way we should be doing things. We are a representative democracy. We represent the people. They tell us how they feel. They're allowed to vote us out. They're allowed to vote on the budget. That's how it works. We shouldn't be putting things like this on a ballot for people to vote. It's going to hurt our community members in a plethora of ways. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ryer. Al?
We have 10 members on this board that vote. We have 9.5 votes.
9.
People have
9.
spoken. What's that?
9 votes.
9 votes.
Yes.
And we have, the people elected us to make decisions on their behalf. Sometimes we make the right decisions, sometimes not so right. But always it's our decision to make because we are in the positions that we are in. So putting out a petition is like saying, okay, you make the decision public. We're just the board sitting around the table sending petitions out for you to tell us what to do. That's not what we were elected for. We were elected to make the decisions.
Thanks, Al. That's great. Appreciate it.
Peter?
2 things, just if I can address. One of it is that the public tells us how they should tell us how they feel. That's what I'm trying to do, allow the public to tell us how they feel. And Al, they're not telling us what to do. They're giving us their opinion. All I'm saying is we need to look at an equitable way of everyone giving us their opinion, because not everyone has the skill to sit in front of us and speak like that. And we're looking at a different way of doing it. We're not asking them to tell us what to do. We're saying, how do you feel about something? And if we're sitting in a public office, a public position, we should be wondering what they're doing. We should know what their opinion is. And if that's not important, then why did we let these people speak tonight if we didn't care about their opinions? So obviously opinions matter, and all I'm saying is we need to get opinions every way we can.
So, Peter, thank you. One moment, Susan. What you're saying is perfect because you're saying much better than I said what I was trying to do. I was trying to create the connection with the public that we had heard them in their discussions in the last couple of meetings where people have come and said, this liaison thing isn't working. We need the SROs back. Oh, no, we don't need the SROs back. And we had that weird conversation at the last meeting that was a conversation about having a conversation, right? And what I was trying to do was make connections for the somebody called it transition, but I was trying to make a connection with all this so that when someone's listening to this meeting, they could say, oh yeah, they heard us. Now they're trying to figure out a way to see if we, the board, can do what the community is asking us to do. Because last week, the opinion that we got from our attorney was that we shouldn't do this because it's not part of our statutory requirement, right? So, I'm trying to redeem my faux pas a little bit by trying to show you that was my goal. And Susan.
So, I almost maybe could have been swayed to vote yes for this if we had said it's allowed, but when that we may allow, but when the wording is, we are obligated to put the petition on the ballot, you know, my gut visceral reaction is that this is gonna throw us back into the 1920s and 30s. And, although I totally get that we ought to be soliciting opinion, to be obligated to put every petition that comes before us on the ballot, I can't agree with that.
Okay.
Joanna?
Thank you. I think we are overlooking something that's really important. And Peter, I agree with you. I think that people's voice, community voice, is really important. And I think you make a valid point that there are going to be some people who are going to feel very comfortable coming and speaking to a group of people on camera, and there are other people who are not. My only disagreement, but it's a huge one, okay, is that there are some, I will vote yes for some items to be petitionable items. I will not ever vote on civil rights issues to be petitionable rights. I'm not looking for anybody's opinion as to whether or not they think that this person or that person is more deserving of rights and protection. That's not our community's decision to make. That's when we go back to what Eliana was talking about, decades of research and court judgments and whatnot. Those are non-negotiables, okay? But other things, I welcome petition. I welcome people coming. I welcome people writing letters. I welcome any way that we can think about creating more voice. And that has been, everybody's annoyed with Joanna because I've been talking about goals for so long, but that's my number one thing, is that I want to be able to hear from the community more. So I do not disagree with you whatsoever about that. I'm happy to go to, the dump. I want to go places and figure out how can we solicit more information from people and to hear different people's perceptions and experiences, but not when it comes to people's civil rights, not when it comes to people's protections. That is not a votable situation, because in some parts of our country, you're gonna have it would come out differently based on people's politics. That doesn't make it right.
So, can I ask you a question?
Yes, but did you really hear what I have to say?
I did hear you, and I understand that, and I guess part of me is saying, I grew up here, and my family's here forever. I don't believe that 5% of the voters are going to bring you a petition. I think they're struggling to get 5% of the voters on this, and this is a pretty strong group that agree. I'd have a hard time believing that 5% of the voters are gonna sign for things like the bathroom issue or for a civil rights issue. So are you saying, I just want to keep you on the line while you're agreeing with me. Are you?
I know, it's a moment. No,
It is. I don't wanna let it go.
It's great.
So are you saying that it should be issue by issue? In other words, a petition before us, we discuss that issue.
I'm saying that there are, I wish I had more eloquence to what I'm trying to say right now, but I think I'm just upset about how this all went down. So I'm trying to keep myself in check here right now. I'm saying that I would never want to lead the community, and you also pointed this out in your motion, into believing that if we had an overwhelming outpouring, we had that 5%, right?
Right.
Who said, yes, we need to get our SROs back in here, and everybody's in agreement, then we're gonna vote that in place. Why would we even do that? Because that's a setup, right? So I'm not in favor of allowing petitions to happen on things that are not going to be up for popular opinion. Does that make sense to you?
No, because then you're deciding what popular.
Because it's a civil rights or protected classification of people's rights, okay? So that is where I am not on board, because that's not gonna change just because there's a lot of people who think that that's not the right thing or that is the right thing.
I understand and I agree with it.
We have to let the debate here a little bit, and try to get
They're
back to the
agreeing, let
topic
it
at
go.
hand.
The survey was a setup, that's what was a setup, that's what started it, not listening to the survey.
Ryer?
Yeah, so I think, first, I have two things. I would welcome a petition with 10 people signing it, bringing to us and having us debate that topic. That's what we're here for. Like, if it's 5 people on a survey or on a petition, they can bring it to us, and that's what we're here for, to discuss these issues. Like, that's what we're here for. The second thing is, you know, we have knowledge about things that people might not have, right? Like, we're informed about certain things in a way that we're able to vote on them. So, for instance, the general public might not understand that they would vote for an SRO, they pass, it'd go through, and SAPD would say, sorry, we don't have SROs because we're 3 staff down. Like, these are decisions that we're making because we're informed on how to make these decisions. We're not like, we just gotta, we have to be careful here. And again, like I said, like, anytime there's a petition can come to us, we can have this debate. That's what our job is to have this debate and talk about these things and make the best decisions. And I'm also, I just want to agree with Joanna, like, we shouldn't be debating things that are civil rights issues. Like, these are things that are not up for debate.
And that's why the legal, the attorney spoke the way he spoke. He was saying that, you know, we should not lead people to believing that they're gonna be able to vote this down when this has to do with people's protected rights. It's just, it's not okay.
So, Katie? So my only concern, and I've heard a lot from the community, and I've heard a lot of people who are, for example, very pro SRO, but I've also heard those same people say, we'd be willing to just revisit the liaison topic if the board was willing to hear us. But we're saying they can bring it to us, but are we going to discuss it? Because right now, we're just kind of saying, that's where it is, let's just leave it, because that's where it's in place. These people are saying, we want to talk about it. Are we willing to, as a board, actually talk about it? We have people coming and saying, let's talk, let's revisit.
Hold on, we're getting into the wrong.
Thanks, Katie.
Well, we are, but
I am not opposed to that.
Yeah,
What's
so
that?
getting back to the other topic, I started writing kind of a note, and it goes something along the lines of, like, voter opinion could be valuable, right? So, like, the majority of the opinion could be valuable if we needed to know what the majority of opinion was. And I started trying to think of cases where that would be, right? I don't think it's in cases that come down to equity, right? A lot of times equity, almost by definition, affects, you know, a group that is not well represented by the majority. And so knowing the majority of the opinion doesn't really help you in making those decisions. In fact, it could lead you in the wrong direction if you're trying to have a policy that captures all, you know, that really looks out for everybody. Because almost all of our policies already work for the majority. It's why we have equity issues for a lot of ways. So you have to think about the issue at hand before you decide if the majority opinion is even valuable as a decision-making tool. And I'm having a really hard time thinking of cases where it would be. I think the facts are important. I think most of the time we probably know what the popular opinion is. And I think going through a round of putting on a ballot is not super useful in most cases. I don't know. I can't think of a case where, you know, knowing the majority opinion for sure helps us in our decision making. Yeah.
So I'm using the ballot,
Yeah.
the potential ballot, as a way of gathering opinions, and you're saying the opinions might not be important.
Well, it's not necessarily a, sorry, I'm gonna respond.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
It's not necessarily an objective viewpoint, right? It's the viewpoint of voters. When we start talking equity, especially, like, I don't think, a lot of the groups that you consider when you're talking about equity concerns are necessarily well represented by voters. I think it's groups that don't necessarily turn out, that we still have to make decisions in our school system, because that is everybody, that addresses the needs of non-voters as well as voters. So it's just dangerous, right, to, maybe it's a good tool, maybe it's not. Like I said, I couldn't think of an easy, non-controversial, topic where it would be the obvious tool for the job.
But isn't that just another, like, some people can come speak here, some people can go do that? Like, I think
It could be.
we're giving so many outlets, why not?
It could be,
use
but you
that as
almost have to
another
be a
one?
statistician to know if that data point helps you.
I would truly struggle sitting on a board that does not want to hear every public opinion that they can. And I think that it's important to hear what they want to say. That's what we're here for. They put us here. And now we're saying and you don't have to follow it, but you can, I think we're obliged to hear it.
But nobody's saying that people can't come here, people, and I really think
Yes,
that you.
they're saying they
Okay,
can't come
okay,
here.
okay,
come on.
We have to make sure.
We need to,
We have to make sure that when we are having these conversations, that we are truly listening to one another, because it feels to me like you're misrepresenting I don't hear what you hear when you're listening to Grant right now. And now you're stating it, and people are listening to it, and that perpetuates a wrong, you're misinterpreting, you're misrepresenting what he's saying. And it's frustrating.
So, I think, we're probably, are we ready to take a vote? I know that's a really tough question. I do have a question, Ryer. You mentioned, if a petition came in with 6 signatures, you'd wanna, know those 6 opinions, but you wouldn't necessarily want to put whatever topic was on that petition with 6 signatures on a ballot for a vote, correct?
No, sorry, what I meant was I thought we could discuss that. Like, as a board, if someone comes in and says, I want a microwave in wherever, in the lunchroom or something, we could say, okay, let's talk about a lunchroom, or let's talk about a microwave in a lunchroom. We wouldn't put something like that on a ballot. We would discuss it as a board, because that's our job.
So it would be a way to generate a topic for
100%.
discussion, but not necessarily, so, okay, I just wanted to
Can I just
clarify
have,
that.
but then who decides if that's gonna be put on for further discussion, right? Like, they come in, they say, I want a microwave in the cafeteria. Do we then decide as a board, okay, we're gonna talk about that at the next meeting, or do we do what we do during public comment, kind of hear them and then forget about it?
And that's the whole point of the conversation. That's exactly it. So if you get 1,000 people who put their names on a petition,
Sure.
you gotta follow that through, right?
Correct.
Because if you don't, you've just set 1,000 people up to put their names on a petition, and now we're gonna say, oh, we're not gonna have that conversation because it's actually a civil rights issue. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to say, yes, we will accept that petition and we will put that on the ballot. So I am all for people's voice and getting people's opinions heard. But we have to decide, you have to follow that all the way through and ask yourself, what is that going to look like? Because it's just gonna make more people upset if you don't follow through with what we said we were going to do.
But if we're saying though, I guess I'm just confused, because we're saying, yes, we can put it on the ballot, but we're not that's just another way for us to get information. We're not necessarily going to vote that through. And I don't think we have enough faith right now in our voters for them to say, oh no, it's on. Look, see, we voted yes. I think we're saying, we want to hear it, and then again, vote your conscience. If that comes through, right, like, you're saying follow it all the way through. I think that's what
But
this is about.
but we're not going to put things like civil rights issues on a ballot.
Correct, I know that.
So, but that's the conversation we're having right now, Katie. So how do we decide what goes on a ballot and what doesn't go on the ballot is exactly
Well,
the
if it
conversation.
follows,
okay,
if
wait,
it
Nilda
meets all
wants to
those.
speak, Nilda wants to speak. Nilda?
Julie, I have a question. Hang on, Peter. How, what part of tonight's conversation gave you the impression that we were considering civil rights issues as topics for going on a ballot or not going on a ballot.
I'm, because you framed it as the SRO situation, marginalized people, that's the whole point of this.
No.
No.
She framed it as the SRO
Right.
conversation, so that was my initial problem.
Right, but SRO
Not
on margin,
Peter's motion. Okay, so you asked me a question, that's my response.
Thank you. I think Peter's hand was up before yours, Grant.
Thank you. Just because I've got a little bit of salesman in me, I'd like to change the motion back to allow, and that way it could come up for discussion in each topic. So it would be allowed. So take away obligated and put in allow, which is what the original one was. In other words, somebody comes with a petition, we can sit down and say, no, we don't care what your opinion is, or we can say, yeah, let's put it out to see what your opinion is, or we can say, no, that's a civil rights issue, we're not gonna put that out. I mean, it gives us the option to discuss it.
Grant, did you have something you want to say?
I think there's a motion.
Waiting for a second.
Oh,
Wait, what?
Wait a
so you
second
definitely,
to change.
you actually made that motion?
Yeah, I made the motion to change it to
Is
allow.
that you, Katie?
Sure. Yes, I said.
Did you raise your hand to second it?
Sure.
Thank you.
And all I was gonna ask was for Peter to reread the contingencies, because I think we're getting hung up on
I'm
what's.
missing
Which edition do you want? I've got like 3 of
No,
them.
you said there were like 3, right,
Okay.
from the,
MRUSD allow non-binding referendums to appear on our ballots if they meet the following condition.
Yeah.
And I've changed 5% to 10, to 10 people, right? Is that what we agreed on?
okay,
No,
well,
that's
read what you
5%,
had
right.
in the motion, please.
What's that?
There was more than just that one, though.
Yeah, they're advertised as non-binding with an explanation as to what that entails. Have 5% of the voters in MRUSD. They're legal petitions, which include the petition language on each page. The petition must be submitted to the board 47 days prior to the vote. The petition contains each signer's printed name, signature, and address.
So that motion would allow, constitutionally protected, is that the right term?
I guess if the
would.
assumption
Yeah.
is that
Make sure you
it's
get the
that
words right.
MRUSD may allow,
Civil rights issues.
after discussion,
Okay?
petitions to be warned if they allow these following conditions.
So, with the motion as reworded, it doesn't change the status quo. We are allowed to do the exact thing you motioned without, we could have done that, we could have done that last week. We don't need a motion to do that.
But when we talked about it, the last time we talked about it, it wasn't even an option. We said, no, we're not gonna do that, let's talk about it first.
Sure.
Because we were thinking that there was gonna be a petition brought before us.
But we didn't,
Put it on the ballot.
we didn't wanna talk about it because we didn't think we were allowed to do it. We knew we were allowed to do it. We just didn't know if as a board we were willing to do it. Right, there's no question of whether or not we're allowed to do it.
Okay, but that's not the impression I got from the meeting we had a couple of weeks ago. I got the impression that we could do it, but we weren't gonna consider it.
Two different things. We can be allowed to do it and still not consider it.
I agree,
Okay,
totally agree with that.
so we don't need the
Ryan?
motion.
Yeah, I think now we're, like, okay,
People don't understand.
yeah, so if the motion is that people can bring us a petition and we can decide and have a discussion over whether we put it on the ballot or not, we could just have a discussion and decide whether we want to do what the petition says or not. Like, that's something we could just do in time without writing it on a ballot. This is just taking up so much time now, and it just seems like a waste. If people want to bring a petition to us, they should bring a petition to us. We can look at the petition, and Bill and Nilda, and maybe with asking the rest of the board, can say, you know what, that's worthwhile, let's have that discussion. Or they could say, you know what, no, we're not going to talk about civil rights issues, let's not have the discussion. If people want to have a discussion about district liaison, SROs, microwaves and lunchrooms, whatever it is, like, just come to us and talk to us. That's what we're here for. They've done it. They've had no problem doing it tonight. I had no problem doing it for a year and a half. I could have emailed people if I didn't want to talk in public. These are all things that we could have done easily. We just spent an hour probably talking about this. And the lawyer said to us, do not do this. It's a bad decision. And because it's a bad decision, we could just say, let's take a petition, let's discuss it as a board and come to a decision without wasting time and paper and all this stuff, putting it on a ballot, doing all this other stuff. We could just have the discussion, Peter. We could just say, you know what, this is worthwhile, let's have the discussion. We want SROs back, fine, that's the vote. We don't want SROs back, that's the vote. It's just, this seems like so weird that we're.
Why, are you saying, so if somebody brings a petition, I'm just confused. I get what you're, and I'm just clarifying. They bring a petition.
She had her hand up.
Sorry, I had Joanna with her.
Oh, sorry, Joanna, go ahead.
It's okay. I agree with you up until a point, okay? Where it got messy, and this was my point of contention in the first place, and what I said at the last board meeting, Peter, was I'm not gonna vote, and that's why Grant got, creative with changing what the agenda item was gonna be. Because I said, I'm not even open to having a conversation about putting this on the ballot.
Right.
Okay? And I wasn't happy with how it got presented, none of it. Okay? And so Grant then decided, okay, why don't we just have a conversation about the process? Fine, okay? But that's not how it got presented this evening either, right? So we went back, so that's why this is so messy. So we're trying to have a clean conversation about this process, but we can't because we're all talking about the SRO issue, okay? So the problem is that people in our community, I'm gonna take this is my assumption here. There are people in the community who believe that if they garner enough people who want to sign a petition to get the SROs back into the school districts, that if they're successful in that and they put it on the ballot and there's enough people who vote in favor of putting the SROs back into our school district, that they're gonna make that happen. And that's where the issue is. Because this is not a popular vote. This is a civil rights issue. It is not it's not a votable ballot item.
So, Joanna, that's where I don't understand why you're calling this a civil rights issue. I'm sorry that I'm flustering you, but
I'm sorry.
I need to understand. I have a science background. I worked in biology, chemistry, physics most of my career. So I'm not really hip on social work. So I need to get it explained to me.
So Bill told us a couple of weeks ago that when we asked for the data for the DLO, right? He let us know that 25% of our BIPOC population was part of the overall, was the percentage of students who had been spoken to or, I want to say processed.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm really losing my eloquence here right now.
remember that.
Okay, so that is a problem because 25% of our population is not BIPOC. So that means a disproportionate amount of our students have been addressed, I'll just say addressed, by our district liaison officer. That's a concern. That's a concern. So it's already happening in our community, and we realize that we need to work on that. We need to figure out what the problems are. We need to figure out why there's such a disproportionate amount of students, of BIPOC students, who are getting caught up in our DLO program. So we need to figure out what those problems are. So we have work to do. It is a civil rights issue.
I appreciate that. I understand that now.
Great.
Peter, did you have something you were going to say? Or did I see your hand up?
No, it was by accident. The only thing I would say is, if the board is telling me that if someone comes forward with a petition on anything, that we'll consider talking about it. I mean, if the board's saying that, I could withdraw the motion.
That's what I'm hearing, but Briar, tell me, is that what you're hearing?
Good. Nilda Grant wants to speak.
Oh, I thought Briar had his hand up.
Oh, you did too?
Grant?
Sorry.
He did.
Yeah.
Oh, you did, I'm sorry.
I'll just, I mean, Grant can speak, but all
Sorry.
I'll say is,
I didn't see it.
I'd be open to discussing whatever it was if we wanted to have a discussion about it. I wouldn't say like, oh, okay, let's have the discussion. But if we wanted to sit here and say, okay, do we want to discuss this? We want it as a thing, then I think that's valid. But I think some things might come up that we'd say, no, we don't. This is a civil rights
So
issue.
that was my question, sorry, that I was trying to get to earlier with Ryer, so, Ryer, so if somebody comes in and says, hey, we have this petition that meets all this criteria.
Doesn't need to meet the
No, I know, but I'm just saying, let's just say it does, and they say, can we talk about it? You're then saying, okay, as a board, let's talk about whether or not we should really just talk about it, or?
Sure.
Which is kind of what we do now in terms of,
Yes.
is the will of the
Yes,
board to put
it
this
is.
on the agenda? So that's what you're talking about, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay, Grant.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, we keep saying petition, right? But if it gets to the point where you need a petition, probably something else is broken, is kind of my general thinking on it. Like, there's gotta be, we have a complaints policy, we have a public communication policy, we have ways that we try to get feedback from the community. And, we heard that in our goal setting too, right? Was that we need more community engagement. It feels like the petition is the nuclear option for the community to get our attention, right? Maybe not. I mean, maybe petitions are more, are a little bit, are less sort of severe than I'm making them out to be.
Yeah.
Then I'm trying to read Briar's
Yeah,
body language
yeah,
here. So maybe it's fine, but it seems like a pretty heavy tool, I guess, to prompt board action.
Well, Grant, wouldn't it be the case that, I mean, I think in a municipality that wasn't a school district, that is an avenue that
Absolutely.
the population has to use, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But the school district has a different set of in Vermont anyway, has a different set of
Well,
laws
in a
that
municipality,
what we do.
yeah, in a municipality, the board that is listening to the petition is the board that's directly responsible for the voters, right? Here, we're a board that's responsible for a school district, right? Which is not quite the same thing.
You know, years ago.
Joanna Ryer had her.
Okay.
I just wanted to say something about petitions. Coming from an activist field, petitions are actually one of the easiest things to do.
Okay.
They mean very little in terms of what people actually support or stand for. When you have people here yelling or screaming or telling us things, that's the nuclear option. That's when it's serious and that's when it's a big deal. When people are just signing their name on a petition, not that it doesn't mean anything, but it's certainly a very easy way to garner support or push for a specific action. But I would say that doesn't necessarily, petitions aren't necessarily a huge sign of the will of the people.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you.
I was just, years ago, when we were voting on same-sex marriage, you know, Sarah Brandon Cattell made the courageous vote to vote for same-sex marriage. If there was a petition about all the people in Franklin County who are on board with that, my guess is that not everybody in Franklin County would have been on board with that. But that's what she did, because she voted on what was right for all people. And sometimes that's not the popular vote. Sometimes it's not easy to do. But we're looking at the science, we're looking at the research, we're looking at the details. And it's important, and it's what we have to do to keep all of our students safe. And it's a non-negotiable item, not a votable item. And so I don't want to mislead our community. We have done a study. People have worked on this. And this is done. Open to the fact that we need to look at the liaison program. Open to the fact, making sure that we're addressing all of our safety and security needs. That is absolutely reasonable.
Just a point of order, if we're gonna talk about SROs or the liaison, I'm ready with a whole different argument, but I didn't think that's what we were talking about. I think that's B. I think A is, we're talking about.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
You're very welcome.
So we still have that multiply amended, motion that's been seconded on the floor. Do we want to vote on that tonight? Are we prepared to do that? Is this been a futile process? Because I think a few of you have pointed out that we can already do what Peter is suggesting. And then what I understand in talking to Peter is that the part that everybody agrees on is we want to make sure that people get heard. And so, again, how do we guarantee that the public gets heard in a way that's, demonstrable, that we have a product? Yep, they came, they talked to us about X, and look, here's a report on X. It shows that we are in the 90th percentile and therefore no improvements required, or something like that. How do we connect that loop? And I think where I was coming from in that crazy intro that I did that I will never do again in my life, I was trying to make those connections of putting the story together. So, maybe tonight's not the night to vote on this. I don't know.
Let's vote.
Or maybe we vote.
No,
See where it lands. We can always put another motion on the agenda next meeting. And just-
Yeah, no, that we have to have a vote.
We have to have a vote. There's a motion on the floor.
Go ahead, Al.
There's a motion on the floor, you can't take it off.
Can't you table can't you table it?
That's putting on pause.
Well, you can table after you vote. You can't table a motion that hasn't been made. Voted on. Or you want to table I'm sorry, yes, you can.
Okay,
I move to table this to the next meeting.
No.
no, I'm not saying we do that. I'm just saying that it's something we could do. So bringing us back, what is the pleasure of the board as to how we proceed?
Nilda, I think we all would like to vote on this side, unless I'm speaking. Okay.
Okay, so I think in order to vote, we should have a reading of the motion one more time, just so we all know what we're voting on.
Peter, please.
MRUSD allow non-binding referendums to appear on the ballots if they meet the following conditions. A, they're advertised as non-binding with an explanation as to what that entails. B, petitions have 5% of the voters in MRUSD. C, the petitions are legal petitions which include the petition language on each page. D, the petition be submitted to the board 47 days prior to the vote. E, the petition contains each signer's printed name, signature, and address.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does everyone understand the motion? Okay, we're gonna take a vote on that motion.
Wait,
Nilda has a question.
Nilda, wait a second. Grant?
So a yes vote would mean that you agree that it's allowed with all those contingencies. A no vote
Right.
would mean that it's not allowed at all, or it's allowed with a different set of contingencies, or it's allowed with no contingencies at all. What does a no vote mean?
To me, I don't know. I mean, it's not, I'm
think
voting
a no
yes,
vote
so
is
I don't know
allowed.
what a no vote is. I think a no vote would mean that they're not allowed under anything, under any conditions.
Or just those specific
No,
conditions?
just these conditions. This motion.
So it'd be allowed under different conditions?
Yeah.
And you can make a
Okay, guys,
motion.
everybody's talking at once.
So, I think Nelda, I'm just gonna help out. A no means a no for that motion.
Right.
Doesn't mean no to anything else, doesn't interpret anything else,
Okay.
doesn't do anything else. It just kills the
It
motion.
just nullifies it and nothing changes.
That's what a no means. It kills the motion.
So, a yes.
Don't
is
read
you
too much
put-
into it. You're killing the motion.
Okay. So yes means you put that in place, and no means we make no changes.
Right. Thank you.
Everybody understand?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Al,
No.
Katie,
Yes.
Grant,
No.
Ryder,
No.
Peter,
Yes.
Jack,
No.
Joanna,
No.
Susan,
No.
Nina.
No.
Nilda's a no, so we have, 2 yeses, and the rest are no's. So motion fails. Thank you. So, the next item would be on, the non-binding piece, right? Which, I don't have the whole wording of it. Can someone please read that for me? Mine's cut off.
Yes, 8B reads as possible non-binding item SRO. That's 8B.
Okay, so since item A did not pass at all, then I don't believe that item B is even up for discussion. Does anyone disagree with that?
You have Susan.
Susan?
I think that we're already allowed to put a petition on the, we're already allowed to put a petition on the ballot.
No, you can put a petition, not on the ballot.
We can, Johanna, what do you say?
Anybody can put a petition together and have their voice heard. It doesn't mean it's going on the ballot.
Yeah, we still have to
But it
decide,
could-
we still have to decide whether or not we're gonna
Right,
consider putting SROs on the ballot.
right. So I guess what I'm saying is, we could take people's feedback and decide to put it on the ballot, even at baseline, even before this. Am I wrong?
So, I think we have to talk process here just for a second, because I truly believe that this item is a moot point because item A failed.
No.
Am I wrong,
Yes.
Amy?
Well, you finish that first, and then I'll get to my point.
Well, I'm finished. You're the only
Oh.
person I can see right now, so
Oh.
please gotta broaden the camera a little.
So, on this item, and I'm just gonna reiterate what I said before, I don't think the people who are bringing this to get it on the ballot would necessarily need it to be on the ballot if we were willing to open the discussion back up as a board on either SROs or figuring out how to make the liaison program more of what they were told it was gonna be than what it actually is. I think just they want their voice to be heard, that they want it to be opened back up. I don't think it necessarily needs to go on the ballot if we're willing to talk about it as a board.
Okay, thank you. I believe I'm correct on this AB thing. Bill, do you have an opinion on this? That you want to share? You can tell me I'm full of crap because everyone else hasn't hesitated to tell me that to me. So I can take it.
I'll tell you what my opinion is. My opinion is, it's not about the ballot. I agree with some public comment that a review of anything, and I'm not doing this on SRO, that a board does review and does monitoring of programs. I've been trying to help you do that all year ever since I assumed this, you gave me the pleasure of serving this district, is that the board should monitor the district. And the board can decide what items they want to monitor. And if this is one that the board wants to monitor and have that discussion, so be it. You have said that you do. You ask for reports twice a year. We provide them. So I think that's the will of the board.
Thank you. Joanna?
I would like to make a motion that we that we, do an examination of the DLO program, and that maybe we come up with a set of assessments or a set of, I'm sorry. really.
Recommendations.
Well, first we have to assess it, right?
Right.
And then recommendations based on the information. So we have received some information, but it was a lot of numbers, not a lot of anecdotal information, and also not a lot about the process, the role, the job description, so on and so forth. So I think we need to learn more of the meat of the program. So
Can
I
I
think
suggest
that,
something?
yes, please.
I think there's a need to assess the liaison program, but I think it should be done by the administrators and with the superintendent, and that report brought to us. I don't think it's the board's role, to look into that stuff in detail. I think it's more an administrative function, but the board should look at the data, the report, and suggest where to go with that afterwards.
Okay.
And
in my opinion.
if I can just say, I think it was at the first board meeting in November, we had the report about the DLO, and we were asking questions about it and looking for feedback that I think we're supposed to be getting at one of the future meetings.
Well, I brought it back the next meeting. The meeting you weren't here.
Oh.
I gave back more detail. We looked
Okay.
at more of the data capturing systems of what we had. The job description and that we can look at again. And, we have that in our MOU with St. Albans Police.
I think some of what we need to
So,
do is go back.
hang on. Joanna
Wait.
made a motion here, so
Wait.
hang on.
Wait,
We
okay, go
have
ahead.
to figure out whether or not that motion is gonna replace this item on the agenda, or is it something we're gonna consider? Or are we just gonna have it be a recommendation that Joanna makes, and then we can find out if it's the pleasure of the board to go on? Because I don't think this is a time to make a motion on this topic right
Okay.
now.
I take my motion
But
off.
that doesn't mean she doesn't have a valid
I didn't even
suggestion
finish my motion.
in here.
Okay, good night.
Question?
Grant.
Have we even moved on from 8A? Are we still on 8A?
No.
No, we moved on. We voted.
Well, we moved, but we didn't get closure on the topic. We still don't know if we're willing to put stuff on the ballot.
You said no.
You said no.
We said,
Motion
We
failed.
said no.
yeah, that motion was to allow, right? So that was the question I asked. So are we not allowed to now, or
We're allowed to.
we're allowed to?
You've always been allowed to.
We've always been allowed to. It didn't change anything.
Didn't change it.
Right.
Are we willing to?
So,
No,
That was a no for all of that, Grant,
Okay.
as a motion. That motion failed. My original question is the second part of number 8, item B, still a valid question to have before the board?
no, because we just,
Once we voted down A, it eliminated B as an option. That's how I read it.
Right.
that's how I read it.
Is it related to a petition?
Bill?
I'm gonna try to attempt to move us on, and you can tell me to be quiet. I've heard the will of this board, not stated as a collective, but enough to say we need to examine. Jack suggests the DLO program a little bit more. I heard Jack suggest that the administration go and produce some more pieces on that. I would suggest that within the next 2 board meetings, that we have a discussion. The reason I'm not saying the next one, because we're gonna have a lot of budget work to do the first meeting in January. But that we have an item on the agenda to talk about what is it the board's looking for in a report, and that we set a timeline for that to happen. That's probably a couple of months, so we can do it properly and get it back to this group. And I'm not trying to put it off, I'm just trying to be reasonable about timelines and the work this board has to do, because we're in budget season, folks. and you gotta have a budget ready to go to the voters in 2 meetings.
Can I?
Okay.
So I'm just gonna say 2 things, real quick. I think we need to take what we said the liaison program was gonna be, and I'd like to see that brought back and talk about what we were told it was gonna be, so we can see where we're at. And 2, I think we really need to think about, with the budget coming up and the voters going to voice their opinion, I think we really need to be aware and respectful of where this all goes, if that makes sense. I think we really need to be aware of the community.
Okay.
Thanks, Katie.
Yep.
Bill, could we add,
So,
sorry,
Ryan.
could we add the school safety officers to that? Like, to the DLO, like, could we
Yeah,
have a?
that's why I'm saying, I
joint
wanna,
thing?
I wanna have the discussion
Yeah,
about what you
okay,
want.
thank you.
I'm trying to get us out of here
Thank you.
tonight
I
at this
appreciate
point.
it, yeah.
We're-
I got you. No, I just mean like in the future, could we?
Yeah, we can have that
Okay.
discussion.
That's all I was trying to do.
All I'm trying to do is move us along.
Okay. All right, Nelda, it's up back to you.
Okay, so we completed 8A, we've decided we don't need 8B. We're going to request by our pleasure that Bill do what he just stated about putting together reports in the next 2 meetings that look at this whole issue.
Nelda, that's not what I was saying, but I'll catch up with you. It's about putting on the agenda for us to have a discussion about what we want.
Okay.
I need a sticker, that's all.
So I'm gonna move on to the next item, which is governance policies, first reading. And it is, I'm looking for a motion here to, warn A58, community representation advocacy, A59, human resources stewardship policy, and A60, planning policy for first reading for possible adoption at the next board meeting on January 4th, 2023. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? No discussion. We'll take the vote, and I would ask for Al.
Yes.
Katie.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Fryer.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes?
Jack.
Yes.
Thank you.
Joanna.
Yes.
Grant. Oh, excuse me. Susan.
Yes.
Nina.
Yes.
Nilda votes yes. Thank you, motion carries. And, next item is other business warrants, and that is, we're looking for a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board member's participation remotely.
So moved.
Motion, please.
So moved. Nope.
Did I hear a motion, Katie?
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We're gonna take a vote. Al,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Fryer,
Yeah.
Peter,
Yes?
Jack,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Nina,
Yes.
Nilda votes yes, thank you. Superintendent's report.
I talked way too much tonight, unless you have questions for me.
No.
Thank you, Bill.
Anybody have questions for Bill?
Sorry, it's 9:13.
Thank you. All right. Board, I have a clock here too, Bill. Board announcements, a couple of things I want to bring up. One of them is that we have 3 board members whose terms expire at the end of this cycle. That's Al Corey, Jack McCarthy, and Grant Henderson. And Al, do you want to speak to your plans?
My plan is to retire into, my bedroom. No, 15 years is enough. I think it's time for somebody younger that has students in school to get involved, so I will not be seeking re-election.
Thank you for your service, Al.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Jack McCarthy, you have anything to announce?
Yes, I plan to go for re-election, and I've enjoyed being on the board. And sometimes I even agree with Peter, so.
Well, you just got my vote.
Yep. So, no, I plan to stay on the board if the community allows it. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Grant?
I will not be seeking re-election this spring. I enjoyed serving on the board. I continue to enjoy serving on the board. And the time commitment for me can't manage. So I'll be taking, at least one term off. Not to say I won't ever run for election of the board again.
Who's gonna do our numbers, Grant? Gosh, you're like the number guy.
Just text him.
I'm good.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you for your service, Grant. Another item I wanted to bring up under board announcements is we received 2 communications this week that were sort of funneled to us via Katie through the superintendent. One of them was an anonymous letter, and the other was a letter from a person named Ashley Dupree. I don't want to read those into the record because that just takes time, but I'd like them to be part of the record of this meeting. So if we can make that happen, please. And then we also have any other board announcements? Anyone else want to make an announcement?
Susan.
Yes, Susan.
So, I think it was last week I went to the BFA Fine Arts Night, and it was really phenomenal, across the board. The arts in the hallways, there was a student, doing a live drawing, the drama center, up in they had 2 kids that were originally from Fairfield, playing in the connector, just actually 3 of them. There was a band, but phenomenal. And I was really impressed with the St. Albans City School Jazz Band that performed. And it was just really nice to kind of see that connection between the middle school also performing at the high school level. So that's my announcement. It was really good.
Thank you. Anything else?
Nilda, I just have something, I just did plug in for the SATEC, sixth grade. They had a 7 Wonders of St. Albans here last week, and the kids did a really good job. They went out and picked 7 facts or 7 stories, anything to do with St. Albans, and did research and presented and here in the library, and they did a really fantastic job. So I just wanted to kind of give them a plug and congratulations.
So, a reminder all that we need to go into an executive session for personnel matter. So, who do we need for that? And, well, let me ask this, do we need to do this tonight?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, you do. I was gonna move us all to the conference room B, and I'll bring my computer, and Aaron's gonna throw us into a meeting room. And then we'll have to come back, so there'll be action afterwards.
Okay.
How are you gonna get me, Bill?
I got it. We got it. We're gonna move you in now. And then we're gonna move you out. You just stay where you're at.
We can leave all our stuff here.
You leave all your stuff here. Yeah, that's fine.
Do they need to vote to go into executive? The seats are comfortable.
Yeah, I never have. You have it now.
Yeah.
Finally made it.
No, they never motioned to go into executive
Oh. Joe, Ryer, you guys, we never made a motion to go into executive session. So we probably ought to make that motion.
Probably I'll make that motion.
I'll make a
Nina,
motion.
Susan?
Need to make a motion to go into executive session.
I'll second that motion.
Well, I'm making the motion, so are you.
Oh. So I'll second that motion.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna second that motion. Now we need to vote on it. You're making the motion, I second it. Now we have to take a vote to go into executive session.
All right. Joanna, you guys,
Yeah, we gotta make the motion, or we gotta vote on it.
You know, every time I change it, I just keep me on your toes, you know? Magnet, I want to talk about magnet.
Oh, because
What if it's
Monday
something?
now.
okay, we need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, vote on it. Katie?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Ryer?
Yes.
Susan? Yes. Jack?
Yes.
Nina? Yes. And I don't know if Phil there. Okay.
Okay, we are out of executive session. I need a motion in regards to the personnel matter.
Neil, I'd like to approve the early retirement as requested by Diane Casserole.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of the Al? Okay, Katie?
No. Wait, what was, I'm sorry.
That's right.
You said to yes or to approve it. Yes, so no. Sorry.
Okay, Grant,
No.
Peter,
No.
Ryer,
No.
Jack,
No.
Joanna,
No.
Susan,
No.
Nina,
No.
Nilda votes no. Al, can you unmute? You need to unmute. Can someone unmute Al?
No, we don't have that ability from here.
You gotta unmute your device.
Oh, yeah, can we give thumbs up or thumbs down?
She can hear us.
Yeah, he can hear us. Al, can you do a thumb?
Can anybody
Oh,
hear
he
Al?
there? Yeah, you just had it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You can
So
hear
what's
me?
your vote in this motion?
No.
Thank you. Motion fails. Any other items to come before the board?
No.
No.
Thank you all so much for your passion and
Happy holidays.
enthusiasm.
Bye, guys. Happy holidays, everyone.
Tonight.
Merry Christmas.